Hello. Hi. That should be live. Should be public. It is. Okay. Where's the button I click to get the link to share? This button? Here it is. Oh, God. My camera is slightly moved because it's on a tripod. But it's also blocking a bit of my second monitor, so it's harder to see shit. Like the chat, which I see. I believe that's Aztec. He lives. He does. He does. No content. Bruh, I literally just hit live. I'm about to do the thing now. Chill. God damn it, Ace in my Discord. I just hit the live button now, and he just messages in the chat like, no content alert? I'm typing it now. Chill. Chill, bruh. Okay. I don't know how long I'll stream. I don't intend to stream very long tonight. But we can talk about stuff. At the very least. So this, there you go. Oh, fuck, you know what? I forgot to do the @ Oh, there's that. Let me type faster, bro. Bro, if you know this stream is live, you already got some notification, okay? This is for the people that don't get those fucking notifications, alright? That's what the Discord shit is about. You'll notice I also don't have my headset on. I don't know. I just kind of felt like trying not wearing the headphones while I stream tonight. I don't plan to have music playing or anything, but I'm not used to talking in the mic without my headphones on. When I have the headphones on, I can hear myself back, and I feel like I can, like, I don't know, better control my volume or, like, how I sound or something, but it just feels so much better to not wear the headphones. And I don't really need to if I'm talking on the stream, so. I'm just sitting around with Overwatch League on another monitor. Hoping for a key drop. Oh, for Overwatch 2? I know that exists. I did not know it was actually out, or like people were starting to get beta stuff until like some article said that viewership of it on Twitch has already dropped like a fuck ton or whatever. I reflexively put my headphones on when I sit at the computer, even when I'm not listening to anything. Yeah, I usually do the same, but sometimes when I'm trying to focus on something, I won't want like any sound or whatever playing, and I'll forget to take off the headphones, and then eventually I'll notice like, what the fuck am I doing? And I'll take them off and I'll be able to focus on my shit, but if I move the camera slightly, I can see the chat a little better. $1.5 million to like 9K? Damn. And then some people were coping, saying, oh, that's just because everybody was getting the game now. Everyone's just playing it. I can only imagine it was like 4 or 5 big streamers that were streaming it or something, so they were getting a fuck ton of views, and now they're probably not streaming it. So all those viewers left, because it's typically how that works. There might be a bunch of people getting the betas now and stuff like that, but I can imagine nobody's fucking watching those guys' streams. So, I don't know. Okay. I just came back from the new Doctor Strange movie, the Multiverse, whatever the fuck it's called. It was fun. It was long, but it was fun. The movie started at like 3:45 it was supposed to start. And then you have trailers, of course. But when we get there, we got there like closer to the time than we expected, because we left my house. I got picked up around like 3 o'clock, and all the school buses were dropping off kids right in front of us the entire way to the theater, which is annoying. But that's the price you get for going to the movie at fucking 3 o'clock, I guess. We get to the theater, and we're trying to figure out which theater it's in, My uncle's the one who got the tickets, and the tickets are on his phone or whatever, but he's got popcorn and shit in his hand or whatever, so we don't know off the top of our heads what theater we're supposed to be going into. But there was like 2 theaters. We were given like glasses. It was a 3D thing, which, by the way, why are we bringing 3D movies back? Just because fucking Avatar is getting a sequel? No, please don't bring back 3D movies. I beg of you. No, I don't want to, especially for me, because I wear glasses, and I don't want to have to wear glasses over my glasses. It was so fucking uncomfortable for like very little, like, distinct difference. Holy fuck. But, so we try to go into one theater. You know, outside of our theaters, they'll have like these screens that say, this movie is showing in here at this time. It's like, you know, a TV screen. For some reason, the TV screen on one of the theaters that we were right in front of that looked like it's the one you go to for the 3D experience, it had the top half as the only part showing for the time. So we're looking at it, we're thinking, it says something 45. I'm guessing that's 3:45. Kind of looks like the top part of a 3. We go inside, it's very much the middle of the movie. So we quickly turned around and we're like, looked, and they're like, that must be 2:45. Because that was not a trailer, that was clearly the middle of the movie. So this must be a 2:45 showing. And then we kept looking around, we found one that said 3:45. Because it was like right next door, we were just trying to... Yeah, the one next door didn't have a screen that was on, so we weren't entirely sure if that was even a theater that was showing Doctor Strange, but apparently it was, so. 40 movies, please give me back the scratches. Oh, God. I remember my experience with a 4D movie. My last, I think my first, well, actually my first experience with 4D shit, I think was in Disney World or something like that. But my last case of experiencing the 4D movies, Alex says, love you, bro. Love you too, dude. My last experience with a 4D movie was with that shitty Fantastic Four reboot. And it was made even more shitty by the 4D experience. There was like something, like early on, there was a scene where the guy who plays the fire dude, whose name I can't remember, God, I suck at superhero shit, and he's doing like some racing stuff, and he something happens with his car where he makes a lot of smoke, he like burns out or whatever, and there's a lot of smoke coming out. And in the 4D experience, they want you to feel that smoke. So they shot a bunch of shit, and it's all smoke shit, and it all smelt really bad. And then that smell stayed there for the entire movie, okay? And then every, like, gunshot or, like, punch or whatever, the chairs would have these things that shoot air at the side to, like, make you feel the impact of it. It just kept scaring the shit out of me the whole time. I was just like, what the fuck is... I felt like I was, like, under attack the entire time I'm watching this movie. The entire time. It was such a fucking... Oh, God. And then it was shaking you around everywhere. You go fucking everywhere for, like, the smallest fucking things. And the movie was not at all good, too. So I'm just like, this is a painful experience. I feel like every time somebody's getting tapped on the shoulder, I'm getting, like, a gunshot to, like, the back of my head that barely grazes my scalp or whatever. And I'm in fear of my life here, okay? Despite how dog shit it was, luckily, the movie did not feel very long at all. The movie felt surprisingly very short, to the point where I was just like, what the fuck was the point of this movie? Was I just here to be subjected to dumb 4D bullshit? Is this some weird social experiment going on right now, where they just want to fuck with people? I don't understand. But that was my experience with 4D movies. That's the main one I remember. The other 4D experience was with some Disney stuff when I was really young, so it was like... It was some stuff like, oh, there's supposed to be bugs in this area, so they make it feel like there are bugs moving around under your chair or something like that, and like dumb shit like that. But the movie experience of 4D, that was painful. That was just painful. The point of making Fantastic Four movies is to retain... Yes, I do remember thinking about that too, where it's like, this has to be some weird, like, copyright IP shit, right? Because this is clearly, they didn't give a fuck about this movie at all. But for some reason, some crazy person said, you know what would be a good idea? Let's take that movie and give it a 4D experience in select theaters. Oh, God. I think my theater, the one that used to be like 5-minute walk away from me, because that was the one I used to go to all the time, that was where I had that experience at. And I think that was their first and last time trying out a 4D experience. I don't think they ever did again. But now it's closed forever. Because COVID happened and theaters were shut down for a while, and they sold it, and now it's been torn down, and they're building a Amazon warehouse there. Fun. So that happened. I can still go to the movies, but the places are further away. I can't go. I used to be able to go like once or twice every single week just because it was a 5-minute walk away. Why not? It was a fun time for me. Just watch whatever. But I don't get to do that unless I want to keep, I don't know, paying a lot for like Ubers to go there constantly or something like that. And there's not too many good movies or not too many notable movies coming out lately, in the sense of like they're not really marketed enough for me to even know that they exist in time. Nor do I want to go and get some kind of ride there, coordinate something for that, because it's like I don't even fucking know you exist, and I don't think anybody else does too. Acquire vehicle again. It's funny. I have my license. I've had it since like near the end of high school, but then I went to live in campus in college. So I've never driven since I got my license. But I also don't need to go too many places because I work from home. I'm a computer dude. I don't really exactly need a vehicle per se, at least not at this point, but yeah. Just run there? I'm not running there, no. No, this is not happening, I'm sorry. 4D movie where you also get beat up. Yeah. Oh, let me move this a bit. It's still blocking the chat a little. Actually, technically speaking, you can't even see my screen right now. I can just put the chat on this other monitor, and then I'm not looking. I like where the chat is, kind of, because it makes it look more like I'm looking at the camera, I guess, and it makes it easier for me to, but it's also slightly blocking it, so maybe if I move it a bit like there, it's a little better. You don't think I run his programs? Yeah, that's how it goes. That's how it goes. Okay. What else do we got to talk about here? Why did... Oh. It is blocking some messages, but... I think it's just blocking every time Ace says a bad word like shit or beating my meat. So, it's YouTube that keeps auto-blocking it. I don't want anything to be auto-blocked by YouTube, but I don't know how to tell it not to auto-block shit. If anybody knows how I can make YouTube not stop people from sending bad words in my chat, I would love you forever, okay? Because right now my boy Ace is being oppressed, and I can't have that. Okay. And they call him Hacker Man. They just can't handle this power. True. Okay. You sat in one that had rods that poke you in the back? Oh, Jesus. Oh, God, I would hate everything. You're like, and some of the ones that like strap you in with like a bunch of belts and stuff too, because it is going to be moving around and shit. I'm just, oh God, I do not want to be strapped in to be poked for several hours, and it's not like some kind of massage treatment bullshit or whatever. It's just you're strapped in a shitty movie torture simulator. Like, Jesus Christ, I don't want to deal with that. But the movie itself, because I went to see Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness, I think it's called. That was alright. What did Aztec say before people were saying about it? Heard the new Doctor Strange was pretty much just an enjoyable, campy superhero movie. Sound right? It does sound right. I did think there was some really cool scenes that felt super out of place for a Marvel movie. There was one scene in particular that felt like it was straight up ripped from The Boys, or that would happen in The Boys, if you know that show. But that's, I guess, Sam Raimi doing what, because Sam Raimi directed this. Sam Raimi doing weird shit, I guess. But there was interesting ideas presented. The thing that just annoys me is I don't want us to have Marvel movies that are just like, it feels clear to me at this point with the multiverse stuff, because now we've had 2 movies in a row doing multiverse stuff, and it's clear we're going to keep doing things connected to different multiverse stuff, that we're just going to use this to say we could do literally whatever with all of our superhero shows. And I don't know. I kind of don't know if I like that, because it kind of lessens some of the stakes, because it's like, oh no, Iron Man died or whatever, but there's another universe where he probably exists as a slightly different person, different actor or whatever, so we could still get movies because of that. Or it's like, I don't know how I feel about that. But I get it from Disney's perspective because it's like we can keep this brand alive forever. All these characters, we can keep all of it, We can keep selling the toys. We can keep doing all that because I don't know. I think it's cool because you could do a lot of different stories with it now. But I also don't. I just don't know how I feel about the implication of where this is going with the multiverse stuff. I think the next Thor is multiverse stuff too. It definitely looks like it. We saw the trailer for that before the movie started. That reminds me, before the movie started, there was a trailer for a movie called Bullet Train, and I'd seen this trailer before, and I think the movie looks cool. I might check it out. The theater we were waiting in, it played the trailer twice. It played the Bullet Train trailer, and then I think it played a Bob's Burger the movie trailer, and then it played the same exact Bullet Train movie trailer again. I'm just like, Jesus, I guess they really want us to see this movie. Like, it wasn't even a slightly different trailer. It was the same exact trailer. And then after that, they showed us some long sneak peek scene of Top Gun Maverick, which it was like some dogfight plane scene that went on longer than it probably should. And then also, I couldn't tell who the fuck was who because you're only seeing like their face in the cockpit for like a half a second. You can barely have time to read what's on the top of their helmet. You don't even know who it is. But I don't know. Not very excited for that, but I don't know. Bullet Train looked funny and cool. That might be worth checking out. I've been hearing good things about that Nick Cage movie too, where it's like kind of meta about like himself and his audience reception or whatever, but I don't know. Call me cringe. I really don't like this multiverse thing Marvel's pushing. Just don't like it. I'll call you cringe, but I don't necessarily think you cringe for that, so. Yes, Asik, your message of shitballs was in fact hidden by YouTube. I had to hit show, and now it's showing. It doesn't show me. I have like Twitch OBS, and I have it so that you can see the YouTube chat in it, but it doesn't show me when it's hiding chat messages in that. I have to click the Chrome tab with like all the other stuff, which I usually keep underneath it because I'm just like, all right, I see my camera, I see my settings, I see the chat. I don't need this other screen, but I'll keep it up just in case. All right. All right, where do we want to start? Because we got some anime discourse things that happened recently, some of which are whatever, some of which are interesting discussions, some of which was like bullshit, and I don't understand why this is blown up to be a bigger thing than it is. All of it, I think, is kind of interesting to discuss in one way or another, and if you follow me on Twitter, you've probably already seen me rant about some of these things, so we could do some anime discourse discussion first, or we could talk about some manga I read recently. I have a big pile of manga stuff I've read recently, and also my Kindle, because I read some stuff on digitally. Okay. Not everything has to be in print, alright? We can also talk about the current seasonal stuff, because there is some seasonal stuff I want to talk about, especially Summertime Rendering, which I've been doing weekly episode reviews of on my website, Jotaka Network. I am super glad with the newest episode of that, because I was getting a little nervous with what was going on in that series, and I was like, this is gonna, I don't know if I like this yet. I kind of feel like I hate it, and I'm worried because I said I wanted to do it weekly for the entirety, and then now I find out it's gonna be 25 episodes long. It's like, Jesus Christ, I don't know, but luckily the newest episode was good, and it gives me hope for the future episodes, so I'm glad for that. Took them 4 episodes though. You've not been keeping up with the anime season or anime? Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of decent shows, but I think there's only really like one show this season that everybody is talking about, and that's Spy Family. Well, that and also Shield Hero for like the first episode for everybody to be disappointed, and now that's kind of gone away. I saw a chart recently that said that dropped real hard. And Kaguya-sama's airing now too, and people like that, but I don't really see too many people talking about it specifically too much. I see nobody talking about Komi-san, but that might also be because Komi-san is probably in the Netflix jail delayed bullshit or whatever, so. One of the best shows this season is one that only a few people are talking about it, but I don't think it'll get a lot of discussion, and that's Your Boy Kong Ming, and the reason why people aren't really going to talk about it is because it's in High Dive. But it's a really cool like reverse isekai premise, I think. But it's like because it's really weird and really interesting, but I don't think too many people are going to talk about it just because of where it's hosted. That's how it goes. Okay, let's start with the manga I've been reading. Let's talk about the manga I've been reading. I got my Kindle thing ready. If I want to talk about the digital stuff, I have physical manga here too. We can discuss. I have anything over there? Do I? No, those are ones I've already read before. Okay. I do have some more manga on this table that I do have to read, probably during the weekend. I don't know. Oh, first of all, New Game, the New Game manga. I read the final chapters. They were uploaded onto the website. The final print version of the manga for the final volume, I think, is coming to me at the beginning of June or something like that. That's what Amazon told me because I pre-ordered that or whatever. So I read the final chapters of that. It's finally ended, and I'm a little sad that it ended, but it also got really weird with its ending. But I like some of the messages it was portraying with the end of New Game. I can understand why there wasn't a season 3 of New Game, because after season 2 in the manga, there's a lot of plot that doesn't focus on Aoba, who's the main character. So, and I think there's like entire arcs where like Aoba is like barely even a character, but she's kind of supposed to be the main driver of the core premise of New Game, which is a whole big theme about entering the adult world of like a work life or whatever. It's literally a new start. It's literally a new game. Like there's a whole bunch of different themes, which I'm thinking about making into a video in the future. I want to kind of, I think it'd be interesting because I see so many people do like thematic analysis videos about shonen stuff because they're popular and there's a lot of them. I think it'd be interesting for me to dive into some of the thematic stuff that I like about New Game, because there's a lot of different facets I could talk about with that, I think. But people usually write it off as just a slice of life, cute girls doing game dev with a little bit of Yuri in it kind of story, which, I mean, that's not entirely wrong, but there's also more interesting aspects to it that personally like connect with me and make it really interesting. And so that's why I really enjoyed the series, and I'm sad to see the series go, but it had to end eventually. And it was kind of getting weird with the ideas we were coming up with for the next aspect of the story. The ending felt kind of rushed, but I can kind of understand where the author's just like, we got to wrap this up. We got to move on because there's not too much more we can explore unless we're going to get really, really dark and depressing, which they liked to not do anything too malicious in the story. I think later on in the manga, when like there's one person who gets hired for a job as like an illustrator for a light novel cover who's like also working at the place. The editor person or publisher person she's working with turns out to be lying about the story having some adaptation thing already announced, and it falls through and they get a lot of shit, and the illustrator is getting in trouble for it too or something like that. Community gets, I don't know. But even that, where it's like, okay, this is clearly somebody who was lying to like get people to do work that hasn't been agreed on yet, and they're just hoping things work out, and they've kind of ruined it for everybody in the end. Even that's not really treated as like, well, they're kind of treated as like, wow, why would she do that at first? And then they give her own redemption arc, and now she's like producing an anime adaptation of some game that they developed or something like that. So I'm like, oh, so even that, the author really wants to redeem a lot of the bad characters. So it's really interesting because we're putting this interesting conflict that's like can have very bad implications in real life, and in some parts where I like making it more idealized or fantastical with how we're presenting it, of course, because it's cute girls doing anime game dev stuff, and also dealing with career and life choices and decisions and all that kind of stuff, and keeping interest in your passions was a big theme as well. But it's I don't know, I really enjoyed New Game. Some things that it tried to do later on in the manga was interesting, but probably could have been executed a little better. But overall, I liked how the author was trying to handle some of those situations and the messages they were trying to portray at the end with it. It kind of makes the game dev world seem like, nobody's really an outright asshole. People are just trying to do their best at what they're trying to do, and some people just don't really know what they want to do or don't have the correct motivation to fully achieve what they want to do. Whereas, other people outside of that industry will look at them and think that, wow, this person's lazy, this person's a lying scumbag piece of shit, or things like that. And so I liked that kind of image that it portrayed. So, New Game is really good. I do think there could be potential. Well, I'd say there could be potential, but that's just me saying I feel like it would do well. Not that it's ever actually going to happen. Not for a season 3, but for a prequel based on, I think, volume 4 or 5 of the manga. Volume 4 or 5 of the manga specifically becomes a prequel to New Game. It's Aoba, Nenichi, and their other friend, Hotaru? I forget. And they're in high school. And I feel like that whole volume itself could be a really interesting like prequel movie or OVA thing. But I don't think we'll ever get that. It also doesn't have to do with games. I think that was more focusing on them wanting to become artists or like where they want to go in life. It very much does not focus on games in general. So that'd be a little weird to call it a New Game and that has nothing to do with game development. But, I still think it'd be cool, but maybe not as a New Game story. I don't know. But that's New Game. One of my favorite manga series. And it's now over. That's a little depressing. I don't know what to do with that. I did get... I'm not going to show you tonight because I'd have to go over there and it'd be a whole process or whatever. I have like 3 art books based on New Game. One is by the manga author. And it was to celebrate the closing of the series. So it's all the manga art and concept art and stuff like that. And then 2 of them are from the anime, Season 1 and Season 2 art books. And those are really cool. Unfortunately, it's all in Japanese because this is a Japanese art book. It's not going to get localized, probably. And there's a lot of interview stuff in there, which would probably be really cool if I could read it. Or if it was translated. I don't think there's somebody who translated it online. I don't know. I'd have to look into it in the future, but... yeah... that'll be a goal for me to read after I'm done learning my weeb stuff. Now, that's a New Game. What else we got here? Spy Family. This is volume 2. I have volume 1 over there. Spy Family is the big meme show everybody's enjoying. This actually relates to one of our anime discourse stuff that we'll get into. So, New Game. Why did I say New Game? We just talked about it. This is Spy Family. Spy Family. Spy Family. Really interesting premise. Very simple. Very comedic. Very fun. But also really interesting in like what's going to happen next with it. Because they kind of have to. Because Print and Shonen Jump, that's kind of their thing. They need to. If they're not keeping interest constantly, then they're axed in like 10 chapters or whatever. So the premise here is you have a father, a mother, and a daughter, but they're actually like a fake established family for a mission. The father is actually a spy who is trying to prevent a war thing from behind the scenes from breaking out. And to do it, he has to establish a fake family and get their child to become friends with this kid who's the son of a wealthy, powerful person. And he has to get to them to be able to stop the war from breaking out. And apparently the only way to get in contact with them is through the son or whatever. So they establish this fake family. He gets the daughter, who is Anya, who's like an orphan from, adopts an orphan, and she actually turns out to be a telepath. So she can read minds. But obviously he wants to keep the fact that he's a spy secret, and she wants to keep the fact that she's a telepath a secret because she doesn't want to be thrown away or kicked out or whatever, or thought weird, or people do experiments on her or whatever. So she wants to keep that a secret. The mother, who they find later, is an assassin who is okay with the marriage arrangement, the fake marriage arrangement, because she wants to do her assassin work, but she's also keeping that a secret from the family as well, naturally, because she doesn't know the secrets about both of them. Anya, the daughter, obviously knows the secrets of all of them because she's a telepath. So you get some nice comedic bits from that, and you also get nice comedic bits from this like nice little cute wife who has this like violent side, and there's constantly jokes about how like Anya's just like, Mama's good at fighting but like nothing else. She like can't cook, can't really clean or whatever. She does her best, but like she is very much unskilled in a lot of things. um but it was interesting seeing the whole arc with Anya going to the school, or there's a whole like period where they have to apply to be in the school, go through a bunch of interviews and testing and stuff like that. And there was like multiple layers to the testing and comedic characters related to those. And it just all kind of works really well. It's very nice, funny. And from where I've been reading so far, I've continued it digitally. They were about to get a dog. I don't know what fucking weird shit's going to go on with the dog, but there's gonna be weird shit going on with the dog. I guarantee you of that, because they're trying to do that kind of like double life thing with every key important character. So like your sister, your is the wife. Her sister, or not? Why did I say sister? Her brother. Her brother is actually secretly. I think before they were trying to say he's like some diplomatic employee or whatever, but he's actually like a secret police agent who's trying to hunt the spy father, whose codename is like Twilight. He's trying to hunt him, but he also has like a weird sister complex. So you know, he very much is jealous of the new husband and is probably just trying to gonna try to ruin his life just over that, the fact that it's his sister, which is weird because the beginning of the manga kind of started with him like forcing her to try to find a boyfriend anyways. This was weird, but oh, it was interesting. It was cool. I very much enjoy Spy Family. I'm going to keep reading it and get caught up on it digitally, hopefully this weekend, because I really like it. And I also want to get caught up on the manga so I can watch it along with the anime, which is airing right now, and it's really good, which will go into one of the Discourse things we'll talk about once I'm done talking about manga. The next one, My Wife Has No Emotion. This is a comedy, which is a robot wife. It's supposed to be like a domestic care unit, and she is like really good at cooking and establishing so much stuff, but like she is literally not programmed with like additional emotional connection stuff like I think her other better models are. But you can clearly tell that like she's piecing things together that will form some kind of connection. I can't tell if she's actually developing some kind of emotional bond with the husband, or if she's just learning based on how her husband acts. But either way, it comes off as like a cute little robot romance with like just the two characters and like the guy's sister, who apparently has some kind of fetish for interspecies relationships or something like that. Where she's just like, "Oh, you're dating your robot? That's so hot," or something like that. It literally says like she has an interspecies fetish thing or something like that. I'm just like, oh, okay. It's a weird thing to have a fetish about. I don't know if that's common, but all right, you do you. You do you. That says wife. I thought that said life. No, yeah, this is his wife. This is the wife. My wife has no emotions, or no emotion. It's a guy and his domestic care robot. And I like it. It's cute. I think it would do well as a nice little short anime adaptation. There's nothing very plot heavy. It's just a nice slice of life rom-com. Don't know if it would get huge at all, but it's nice. I do not relate to that title in any way, shape, or form. Not having a wife? I mean, it's pretty easy to not relate to that kind of title, I guess, if you don't have a wife. Having a wife, but she has no emotions? It's a little trickier. But is there fan service? No. This is not like some kind of fan servicey thing. This is wholesome. This is wholesome content. Despite what the husband's sister might think, okay? This is wholesome. Very wholesome, Ace, okay? The other thing we're going to talk about, though, Gigans, is very much not wholesome. This is the exact opposite of that. This is by Hiroya Oku, which is the main reason I got it. And it is... and that person is the one who made Inuyashiki, which is like my favorite anime slash manga of all time, especially sci-fi wise. I love it so much. The author also did something called Gantz, which I still have not seen, but apparently it's their like most famous work or something like that. Gigant's is it features um like an amateur porn star girl trying to make a name for herself, and like this dude who's very much like a weird sex addict person who's like trying to become a film director, and he meets the amateur porn actress in an area nearby, and they they become like friends, and there's some weird stuff happening. This has like the weird sci-fi twist that I kind of figured that this author would introduce, where it's how do I describe it? It has some serious times with like the amateur porn star's like life. I like how it treats this like, you know, the not all like porn stars, sex workers or whatever, especially the amateur ones, are like rich and popular and have their life all set and they just have to have sex on camera or whatever. No, it doesn't. It shows that her life is actually kind of dog shit, but she's just doing what she does to make money for her family and stuff like that, even though they're shitting on her for doing it. But it's like, well, I'm the only one bringing money in this family. You guys are pieces of shit. And her boyfriend's an asshole who like just takes her money and then goes and throws it away at pachinko machines or whatever. But main character boy is just like, I really want to get into film. I enjoy your films. I don't necessarily want to get into making those kind of films, but I like hanging out with you. So, you know, they become friends. There's this weird dude in the area who starts like the key plot of the story, though, who's like been walking around in like his underwear with like a bat and like a helmet or whatever. And it turns out he was like a weird time traveler guy from like the far future. And he dies from, I think something hits him with a car or whatever. And the amateur porn star girl finds him, and he tries to save him at first, but then he dies. But he like attaches a device to her wrist before he dies, and it's like some kind of dial watch thing on her wrist where if she turns it or whatever, she can become giant. She can increase or decrease her size massively. And so there's a lot of nudity in this because, you know, when she gets bigger, it tears off all her clothes and stuff like that, and it won't fit or whatever. So you have that aspect of it. I feel like this is going to become, this didn't get close to it in the first volume. I feel like this is going to become weird giant naked kaiju fights. Not exactly like Attack on Titan, but like these weird premises where like we have these sci-fi aspects and interesting things are happening, because it seems like there's other devices from the futures that have been brought into this world. There's some website that pops up that says everybody who votes for a certain thing will make that thing happen, and one of them is like, make it shit all over this town, like make it rain literal shit in this town. And so they do, and then it does, like unironically it rains shit in some place. And I'm assuming, I have to assume, that's probably some other person becoming giant and then literally shitting on the town. That's the only thing I can assume, but I don't exactly know. But it kind of cuts off towards where I think it was going to get good in the first volume, so I'll have to check out more. Super interesting, and I like the way Hiroya Oku tells his stories in a way, but I'll have to read a few more chapters to find out for sure. But definitely mature in some scenes. Definitely mature, so be careful. Be careful, kids, okay? If this was a monetized video, it would probably not be after I held him that cover. Now, the next story is by another author I know, Shuzo Oshimi, who wrote The Flowers of Evil, another one of my favorite stories, especially manga. This is Blood on the Tracks. Now, when you hear that title and you see this cover, if you're familiar with the author, Shuzo Oshimi, you're thinking something horrific is about to happen to that child on a train track, and this mother is going to be devastated or whatever. That's what I thought, at least. This became a much different story than I probably ever could have predicted with this. So, first of all, this is just like a childhood photo. The whole story is this kid slightly grown up, like a teenager or whatever. And he's pretty much a mama's boy. Him and his mom are like really, really close. And apparently, this is a big spoiler because the last chapter this is revealed, So if you are interested in this, I guess block your ears, but it kind of establishes the core premise. So I thought it was weird that we left that reveal to the end of the chapter of the first volume. The mother is a psychopath. The mother is a psychopathic serial killer who is heavily obsessed with her son to the point where she will kill his cousin on a family hiking trip for even thinking of joking about endangering her son. So that happened. And it changes. I mean, you kind of get a feeling while you're reading this that something is very off about the mother in some way, especially with how Shuzo Oshimi is like drawing some of the scenes in it, where it's just like this. All these scenes feel dark, but nothing has really happened. It's just nothing has really dangerously happened. It's just like son hanging out with his cousin at home. The aunt comes over every week or whatever. They hang out, they talk, they play games together. The mom is talking with the son, and they feel close, but other times it feels like a little awkward. It kind of reminded me of like Bates Motel or Psycho, like the original Psycho or whatever, with like their kind of dynamic, I guess. I got big vibes about that while reading this, which I guess makes sense. But the other thing I will mention, if you've never read Shuzo Oshimi's works before and the other stuff, they are super easy reads. And I mean this because a lot of it is there's like not much dialogue in it. So it's all really nice scenes, or really, really well drawn art of like a lot of scenes that don't have a lot of text. Because it doesn't really need it. It's just trying to establish a mood and tone for a lot of its stuff. And the dialogue is more there to like add to the weird tones that we're doing, not necessarily to try to like info dump something like a lot of the shonen manga I've been reading recently. I've been trying to do. Holy shit. If you read a shonen jump manga, and then you go to something like this, it's like worlds apart with the amount of shit you have to read every page or whatever. But I guess that, that can also, there's probably also a big aspect with the nature of the magazines they're publishing in. This was, I think, published in some magazine where it was like 2 chapters a month, whereas Shonen Jump, they have to do weekly, and they have to keep getting the numbers they want to survive or whatever. So I feel like this is kind of like a way better environment for someone like Shuzo Oshimi, because it's just like, they can take their time and tell the story they want. They don't need a rush. They could just pace it out better. But it will get to people being upset with that kind of storytelling when you go to watch the anime like the Akunohana anime, and you realize, hey, it took like one chapter told like a whole volume of this guy's story. Because it's like, I mean, or actually, no, it was the other way around. I'm sorry. It was like one episode would take like so many chapters, or an entire, so many, I don't know where, no. Like 3 episodes would take up like 1 chapter or something like that, because of like a lot of scenes where it doesn't look like there's anything in them. But like really in the anime adaptation, you would show all these scenes, have them long pause in detail to like establish the tone that you wanted to have happen. I don't know. Really interesting. Super, super interesting. I want to dive into more of this like right now, but it's hard for me to find official sources to read more of it online. So I might have to go to one of those places, my local video store, where they would definitely sell manga, specifically this manga, because they sell anything as long as you can type it into a search bar. I mean, you ask somebody there for it. I mean, but because like I can just order it physically. I don't want to wait for it to physically come. I don't. And then I also know Shuzo Oshimi's artwork means I'm gonna be really interested in like the story, but if I want to buy the volume of the manga, I pretty much have to buy all of them if I want to get like enough reading time, I guess, because it's really easy to read through all this very quickly, because again, it's not very dialogue heavy. So really good, really interesting. I cannot wait to see what happens next in this. It is super, super cool. What else we got here? Burn the Witch, the manga adaptation, which this is not there was an anime. I forget how they handled it. I think Crunchyroll released it as 3 episodes, but originally it was like 1 movie, or maybe it was the other way around. but it was an anime original thing first. Apparently, it takes place in the same world as Bleach, and because it's written by the same author, Tite Kubo, or Tite Kubo. I don't know how you're supposed to say it, but it takes place in the same kind of thing. The premise is really cool in that it's these schoolgirl-looking witches who work in what's known as Reverse London, which is like some underground world of London that exists in the same kind of realm as London or something like that. Think like the Hogwarts kind of other world thing, I guess, from Harry Potter. And here, it's like there are dragons in this world, but dragons are utilized for a lot of things. Some of them can be used for power, or some of them can be used for like farm equipment and shit like that. But there's also dark dragons that exist. Strictly speaking, apparently, in their world, unless you're licensed, you're not allowed to, or given some kind of permission, you're not allowed to come in contact with dragons at all. And if you do, you might be executed. Because apparently, the dragons will try to take over certain people and try to use them for things. So they just can't trust it. If you come in contact with them and they use a scanner on you and you have a certain level of some kind of poison thing or radiation thing on you for dragons, they're just like, well, we're going to have to kill you now or something like that. So, really interesting, our two main characters. I loved the anime adaptation. The manga adaptation was kind of painful. I won't lie. The manga adaptation was like info dumping a lot, especially with things that it already established in the very first chapter, because the first chapter was like it felt like a prologue one-shot thing, just to kind of see what audiences would like. And then it turned out people did like it, so they worked on a full, the adaptation of the series or something like that. And then the chapter after that just basically explains all the same shit they did in the first chapter, but with different stuff happening. So I'm like, I just read the same chapter twice, essentially. And it kind of took forever, too. And after that, it's speed running through all of the content that was in the movie. Especially with the finale. The finale of the book, which is supposed to be the finale of the movie, the big finale that's supposed to take up a while, they pretty much wrap it up in like a very short time. And that's supposed to be the most climactic part. This manga adaptation was way more of them explaining the lore of this town than it was actually doing the impactful story that they were supposed to be portraying. So, I don't know if I would recommend the manga. By the way, it says Volume 1. This covers the entire movie that's out right now, and there will likely not be a Volume 2. I don't know why they called it Volume 1. There is no planned Volume 2, as far as I know. So I don't know why they called it Volume 1. Wishful thinking? I don't know. Hinting at some future Burn the Witch sequel in the future? I have no idea. Isn't Bleach like getting a reboot thing soon or something like that? I thought I heard some weird thing about Bleach. I know Bleach had some one-shot thing, but I have no idea. The premise of Burn the Witch is awesome. The characters are great. I would say don't bother with the manga. Just go watch the anime. The anime was pretty cool. So go watch that. You don't have to watch Bleach to get into it. I didn't even know it was a Bleach thing when I got into it. Apparently it's set in the same universe, but you don't have to know anything about Bleach to get into it. So that's that. That's all the physical ones I think I've read. Now for the non-physical ones I've read, here on the Kindle, we have Animeta, which I don't know if I want to pull them up on this. For everything I'm going to talk about. Because there's going to be some stuff I'm talking about from the Shonen Jump app. But this one I have on the Kindle store thing. And at least talking about that. Why does it say I'm an Amazon order? What did I order? Oh. Oh, that. Oh. Ooh, okay. Why is this not loading? Oh, here it is. Okay, so the first one is Animeta, which I believe is literally supposed to be animator, but in Japanese katakana or whatever. So it's Animeta. It's not supposed to be Animeta, which is what I thought it was supposed to be, because I thought it was supposed to be a meta thing about the anime industry. I'm pretty sure it's literally animator, but pronounced in katakana Japanese. So it's Animeta. This is really, really cool. If you want to learn about the process, the background process behind how animation is made, in terms of the actual animation itself, read this. It's really, really good. Really, really good. It's told by somebody, I believe a woman who was actually a part of Production IG as an animator. And according to some of the interviews I read in some of the volumes of this, she took a lot of influences of the characters from the people she worked with and her experience working in the industry as a whole. And it's really, really cool as a result, this story. Just to note, some people might know Shirobako exists, which I've seen recently too, as of last summer or whatever. Shirobako is really cool, especially in terms of like getting into like learning more of the background scene stuff of the anime industry, but it's from the production staff kind of side of it. There's a little bit that it handles with like an animator trying to get into that kind of field, but it's way more focused on the production side of it and the scheduling and the budgeting and all that kind of stuff, all that stuff. The actual animation side of it, if you want to learn about that, this is where you go. This is it. Okay, this is where you go. Now, this story focuses on this woman, and whose name was like Yukimura, or at least that was the nickname they gave her. What I liked about this is they did not put someone as the main character who was like a decent artist who just didn't understand the fundamentals of an animator. No, she sucks at art from the start. She is not what you would expect a beginning animator going into work at a big studio would be. She is literally like ground zero learning shit, which is really good. And the excuse they do for that kind of thing is like, oh, this weird director guy, visionary director guy, sees something in her. She has potential to be an impressive key animator, but we have to grow her skills as an actual artist first, because as it stands now, she is dog shit at actual art. And so it's really cool. They give you like the whole process that she kind of struggles through, all these different messages about, you know, how hard it is to be an animator, especially with how they're paid. Because a lot of how they're paid has to do with the amount of frames that they do, whether or not it's a simple frame or a complicated frame. You're paid like a fixed amount per frame that you do. And so the amount of time you have to spend doing some complicated frames, or, you know, the types of frames you get can change whether or not you have a ton of money this month or like nothing. And that's a tough thing to do, especially where you want your art to be really good quality. And if your art's not good quality, then somebody else has to fix it, and basically you don't get paid for it or whatever because you fucked it up too bad. They start you off, and I knew this beforehand too. When you go into the animation industry, typically you start off as an in-betweener, which means that somebody's doing key animation, somebody has done corrections to the animation, and then you, as the in-betweener, one process is you have to do cleanup, I guess, which is where you take that keyframe animation and the correction, and you combine them together. They're on like different paper layers, and you have to trace them to get the actual like cleaned up version of that art in the corrections. And then after that, you have to create the in-between, which is each frame of the key art, or the key animation. You have to draw the frames that are supposed to happen in between, because obviously the key frame animators are not going to be doing every single frame of it. They're going to focus on the main movements, and then an in-between is going to deal with all the stuff that happens in between those key movements. So our main character has struggles to do the cleanup thing, and because that kind of thing is hard to do, it's especially if you are not somebody who is good at it. You might think, oh, it's just tracing, that's not that bad. Well, it's kind of really difficult, right? It's not easy just to, because you have to perfectly trace it. If you're even like a couple millimeters off, or if you do some kind of stroke too weird, it's all going to look like shit. If you're not confident with strokes too, there's a whole bunch of like things that you have to be mindful of, even for just tracing art to make it look the same exact way that other things want it to be. And the in-between thing, so it takes her a while just to get to actually doing in-betweening. And meanwhile, she's there at the same time as like two other people who are new hires who definitely understand art more. One dude's kind of an asshole who's just like, I'm only here to, I don't know, get fame at a big studio real quick and then sell out to go to a shittier studio and just get my name out there as some key animator, even though I'm just kind of lazy or whatever. He's kind of a dick. The other one is like a woman who's a manga artist's daughter who wants to get into animation so that she can motivate her mother to do manga again, because she wants to adapt one of her manga into an anime. But she also has, she's really talented as an artist, but it's a whole big thing where she's just like, I don't know why I'm really doing this. I don't know if my motivation for doing this is really good enough. Meanwhile, this girl who barely knows how to do art is the big director of this place sees something in her, even though I think my art is very much better than hers. So there's a big jealousy thing too. There's a goal in that studio where they're saying like you have to do 500 frames of in between stuff a month to be able to, for like 3 months too. You have to do it a month for 3 months. You have to do 500 frames for 3 months straight, and then you are eligible to take a key animation test. And then if you pass that, you can do key animation. It's like a whole process. And usually it takes them a couple years to even be able to do the key animation test. But the director is like trying to put a fuck ton of pressure on this new girl as soon as possible. Saying, you have to get good at your art now. You have to get really, really good. And it pumps a bunch of really interesting ideas and advice for how to do that. Especially when it comes to like animation stuff, I guess. But I don't know, it's a weird amount of insane pressure to put on someone like that. But I guess it also kind of makes sense with that industry because they are, especially with the schedules that a lot of these studios run at, they have to be able to do stuff really, really fast and make it really, really good quality. You don't get a lot of time to fix things or whatever, or make it just right, even with movies and stuff like that. So it gets tricky. I read 5 volumes of this. It is amazing. It was so really good. And there was a lot of informational, like, in-between graphics among some of the chapters. It was really, really good. I highly recommend checking out this series, Animeta. Fantastic. I think I saw online someone from Studio Trigger, I don't know, one of the directors or something like that, they were saying like this is a must read for like any beginning animator person or anybody even interested in animation or something like that. It's a must read. And I'd say I probably agree. There's 5 volumes that are out so far. It seems like there's more, but I don't know when the 6th volume is ever going to get officially translated, but it's pretty good. How's it different though from like the US? I'm not exactly sure because I don't know too much about the US animation, but I imagine a lot of US animation now is mostly CG stuff, especially where it's like Disney and Pixel stuff, which is vastly different. But also I know Japanese animation is all like a lot of like paper hand drawn animation as opposed to digital animation. I think there's some studios that are trying out digital animation stuff, but for the most part, most of the industry seems like they're still doing it on paper. So I'm not sure. I don't know if that's a big difference too. I don't know how much pay structures are different here in the US as well. I don't know. I do know that there's probably not as much demand for animated works over here as there is in Japan. Because here they're mainly only targeted for kids. But in Japan, there's a wide audience you can have, and they're all going to be pretty huge, not just kids, right? It's like a big, big thing over there to the point where that's why they have 40 scheduled shows every season. So every like 3 months, there's a different batch of shows coming out, and they all have to keep running. And a lot of them are all based on originally made manga or light novel works. So a lot of it is just adapting things that are already existing, whereas it can also be the case that a lot of the stuff that we're developing over here is all like original stuff. They're supposed to be the big thing, and it's only movies, and it's only done by Disney with like a fuck ton of time to do it or whatever, because there's no real threat of it being delayed to the next season or whatever, stuff like that. But I don't exactly know how some of that stuff works in the US, but you get a pretty good idea of how it works in most of the places through Animeta and Shirobako. It's pretty good. What else we got here? I don't know what else I got. Let me check my Annie list. Time is it 6 or 8:26? Oh, I also saw some movie recently called Pompo the Cinephile. That is a fun movie, fun anime movie. Very conflicting themes. The story got pretty weird towards the end of the movie. I feel like I should read the manga, which I think is only like a couple volumes or something like that, because the movie was weird with where its story went. It felt like another one of those movies where it's like it changed what kind of story it wanted to tell 3 times in the middle of it. That happened really much in Belle and some other movie that I can't think of off the top of my head. Words Bubble like Soda Pop kind of had that happen too. And that is very much the case with Pompo the Cinephile. It's still a really good movie, really awesome. I loved the editing that they were doing with it, all the meta like stuff they were doing with the editing in terms of it being a movie production that they're working on. But for the most part, it's like a fantastical story about kids making a movie, like a Hollywood budget movie, but they're not actually kids. They just look like kids. Very much look like kids. But they're not. They're adults in the industry. Whatever. It's still cool. It's a cool movie. I think I had fun with it. I was just kind of disappointed with what the fuck we were doing with the themes and the story and the message. I feel like it tripped over itself with what kind of themes it was going for several times. But I did like the gimmick that it had at the very end was I think the kid's like accepting an award for his film, and they ask him like, what's your favorite part of the movie that you made? And he's like, the fact that it's only 90 minutes long, and then a timer shows up saying 90 minutes, and then the credits roll, because literally the movie is intended to only be 90 minutes long. Because earlier on, the director, main character girl, Pompo, is just like, I fucking hate movies that are 3 hours long. It's a massive waste of my time. All movies should be 90 minutes. Anything else, you should be executed for it. Like, shit like that. It's kind of like how it comes off as. Pompo herself, I will say, she is like the marketing for this movie. She's barely a character in it. She very much tries to have a big presence. Literally, anytime she's in a scene, she'll bust down a door and say, Pompo is here. And then the scene will continue and be like, haha, that's cute or whatever. All right, continue the actual scene. She is very much not really a character. She's just like a background producer person. She's not like a director either, by the way. She's not the main character guy is the director. And he has some things going on, but a lot of it seems like he's dealing with something he's growing out of from like his own past, but you don't learn about that. You're given some emotional like story about whatever stuff he's going through without actually understanding like, what are you talking about? Why are you going through this? We don't even know you. We barely know you. We just know that you're this dude who's now directing this movie, and you I don't know. You don't. The movie itself was trying to be a meta thing about him, but it very much felt like so disconnected from how he was. And it also had a very conflicting messages about overwork at the end of the movie as well. I don't know. I feel like this was somebody making a movie adaptation of Pompo the Cinephile and then trying to make it even more meta than probably what it already was by making it into a movie about him making this movie. I feel like that's probably what happened, and it came out weird because of it. And it doesn't come off as the interesting thing, like the deeper thing that the director or writer probably thought it would be. But I can't exactly tell that for sure until I read the manga. So maybe I'll read the manga. It's like 3 volumes, so we'll see. This is hard news to hear. I'll read it. Maybe it'll be different. If not, I'll tell you. Yeah, I might just read it this weekend or something, because that's something I might do a video on, because it was super interesting. I really loved the movie. Don't get me wrong, I love the movie, but it's not something I can recommend to a lot of people just because it's like, I don't know, it's a fun little thing to watch with like interesting editing and some emotional scenes and a lot of messages about creativity and in the industry and having to balance what you want, what you don't want, but then also finding some bullshit way to get it through anyways. You know, a whole thing about if you're passionate enough, you can make any kind of art that you want to make come true. But I don't know. Go into it carefully, especially if you're expecting Pompo to be there the whole time. She's barely a character. She's a producer in the background. Her goal is just to establish a network of talented people and get projects out there. Establish a budget for these things, get the projects out there. She's not really involved in the projects themselves other than organizing things. She's not like teaching him how to direct or anything like that. So just go into that understanding that like she is very barely present in it. But she's there and her role is kind of important. But it's not going to be what you think. So that's Pompo the Cinephile. Oh, I also read Look Back, which was like a one-shot by Tatsuki Fujimoto, the guy who wrote Chainsaw Man, and then also the recent one-shot by him, Goodbye Eri, which I did a video about. You can watch that here on the YouTube channel. You should watch that shit. It's really, really good. Goodbye Eri was great. Look Back was such a different, interesting experience. Oh my god. Tatsuki Fujimoto needs to write so many more one-shot shorts, one-shot manga. He needs to do it because they're so good. They're so like, oh god, they're so interesting. So this one was like focusing specifically on a manga author girl who it starts with her in elementary school and then goes through it over the years. At some point while they were in elementary school, they started doing their own little comic manga for the school paper. She'll brag about literally doing the comic like 5 minutes before it was due or something like that. And it kind of looks like shit, but it's also an elementary school, like first grader kid did it. So it's like, oh, okay, it looks decent for a first grader, I guess. Another kid who like stays at home all day for some reason. They're like not a hikikomori, but some kind of weird social thing going on with them or medical thing. So they stay home all day, but they're still considered a part of the school or something like that. They wanted to start doing manga in the newspaper as well because they were inspired by her comics, and their work is like really amazing backgrounds. And so there's like scenes where they'll have the newspaper and it's like her work next to this person who stays at home's work, and they're all the kids are just like, man, this other person, I don't know who they are, but it's way better, especially compared to this other person when you put it side by side. So there's big messages about jealousy with that, and eventually she'll like give up on manga for a bit, and then eventually they meet up, the two people, and they find out the person who stays at home is a huge fan of her work. Both of them are girls, and the other one is like a huge fan of her work, the original person, and they become close friends, and they start working on manga together, with the original girl being like the main person and the other one doing like background art and stuff like that. So there's a relationship that forms there, and there's a lot of really cool visual storytelling that happens in the one shot. And then it gets really emotional with some twist that happens towards the end with the person, and then there's some time travel thing that happens later on, which is kind of weird. But overall, its themes are like pretty cool, and I would highly recommend checking it out. It came out last summer. It's on the Shonen Jump app, I believe, and you can check it out now. And while you're at it, you can go read Goodbye Harry, which is also really good. I highly recommend both. Tatsuki Fujimoto is a god among men when it comes to storytelling. Okay, now I'd like to connect all these fucking LinkedIn emails. Jesus Christ. All right. Oh, a lot of your messages have been hidden, Ace. Ever since starting this manga called Dojin work, apparently it's pretty old, and then found it out it got adapted. It looks pretty bad. Animators are just built different. Oh, damn. Oh shit, that's cool. Like, really fucking cool. How do I get YouTube to stop blocking shit and fuck from my chat? YouTube, you fuckers. Stop fucking with my chat. Hold on. I want to look this up real quick. YouTube chat. Don't block swears. There's a top chat, which filters specific messages, and live chat, which shows every message. I have live chat. It still filters things out. Jesus Christ. Potentially inappropriate comments now automatically held for creators to review. How do I turn this off? The setting is now the default for all channels. Creators. Reminder that you can still turn this feature off in community settings at any time. Alright, well, let's see that. Let's find out. Oh, I'm sorry. The thing I'm reading is for comments, not for chat. I could go fuck myself. Alright, well. Let's see. Settings. Community. Nightbot is my moderator. Hold potentially inappropriate comments for review. No. How about I allow all comments? Oh, here we go. Hold potentially inappropriate chat messages for review. Don't. Don't do that. Allow all comments while we're at it. Okay? There. There. I don't know if it'll work this stream. Type the word shit. See if it shows up. I turned the feature off. So it shouldn't hold your thing anymore, but I don't know if it'll work this stream. Maybe it'll work next stream. It looks like it worked so far. I see your message. All right. No more censoring. Everything is free, apparently. Don't get too crazy, boys. You get too crazy, I'll still ban you. So don't fuck. Don't fuck with me. Try not to fuck in the chat, too. Try not to do that. That'd be a little weird. All right. Trying to think if there's any other manga I want to talk about. Oh, there was a manga I started reading last night called Akane Banashi, I think was what it was called. It is a newly launched Shonen Jump series about Rakugo, which if you don't know what Rakugo is, you'd be like me before last night, where I understood it existed, but I didn't know anything about how it worked. It's kind of like comedy, but Japanese like stand-up comedy, but it's literally like they sit down and tell a story in a comedic way, in a pleasing way to the audience, and they like do all the sides, all the different characters of the story themselves from like this one spot on a pillow or whatever. And it's a whole big thing about entertainment. And this story was really interesting. There's only 11 chapters out right now, so it was really easy for me to get caught up on it. This girl's father was trained to be a Rakugo person. He does a performance, which is supposed to be an exam to see if he'll go up to the next grade as a Rakugo creator. And for some reason, this guy, the guy who runs the place, just announces, all right, these people pass. Instead, actually, everybody who just performed tonight, they're all expelled. They're all shit. I hate them all. So her father basically has to quit Rakugo, even though the daughter really loves it. Fast forward to the daughter growing up, and she's basically trying to get revenge on the Rakugo industry by becoming a very successful Rakugo performer herself, because she wants to show her father it and like inspire him to want to get back into it or something like that. But also she wants to do Rakugo because she was inspired to do it by her father. So it's really interesting. I'm learning so much about Rakugo and the ways that it could work in the interesting way that Shonen Jump stories usually tell about getting into these different types of careers. Super interesting stuff, all focused on like, oh, you want to get better at telling a story? You know, it's one thing to be able to do certain expressions and act it out correctly. You also have to learn about how to please different kinds of audience. The same kind of performance that you would put on energetic, like younger people might not work the same way to a different audience of elderly people in a retirement home. So you have to be able to learn and adapt and do something to like please the, because this is an interesting thing that they brought up early on. One of her like upper class people, her like mentor or whatever, it's just like, your Rakugo is good, but it's very selfish in that you're only performing it the way that you want to, when the point of Rakugo as profession is to do it for an audience. You're there to please an audience in a way. And it also kind of brings up those kind of things where it's like balancing the kind of story you want to tell versus the kind of story the certain audience would want. And that kind of thing is something that's present in a whole bunch of sectors when it comes to creative works. Like, I can make these videos about whatever the fuck I want on YouTube, but they're not going to get viewed unless it's something people actually want to watch. So, like, I can make anime science, whatever, on how deadly someone's fart is on episode 376 of Naruto or whatever, but nobody's going to watch that unless this is something that's entertaining and something that other people would want to watch. If I'm just making shit because I like it, that doesn't necessarily mean, like, I can do it. No one's going to stop me from doing it, but it doesn't mean people are going to watch it or enjoy it, especially not in the way that I wanted it to be portrayed. And so that's kind of something that she kind of learns about in terms of Rakugo performances, which is something that's done live. So that's super interesting. The whole thing was like really well done. It is very text heavy, especially during Rakugo scenes, because you'll have both the explanation of the story going on, the dialogue going on in the scene, and thoughts from the audiences all at the same time. So that's a little confusing to try to read through. But if you push past that, it's all still really interesting. In many ways. So there was a really good Rakugo promo vid for a manga now because of that. I want to read who I think does Rakugo in the manga. Oh, okay. Yeah, Akane Banashi, I believe is what this was called, and it was pretty good. I would recommend checking that out. What else do we have? I already talked about Spy Family. Okay, I don't want to be streaming for too long. It's been like an hour, 16 minutes so far. So I'm going to quickly talk about the Twitter drama that's been happening. There's a few that I want to talk about. The first of which has to deal with Spy Family. Now, Spy Family is a very popular anime this season. It's like, I think, probably the popular anime this season. If I check Anime Chart right now, yes, it is the most popular show this season. And with good reason. It's fun. Now, what happened is, there's a Twitter user named Criticold, who some people in the anime sphere on Twitter will know for several things, I guess, but they had made a post, and the post had said something along the lines of, I don't remember if I physically have it. Oh god, it's gonna take me forever to find it. This is a situation that happened with between Criticold and Chibi Reviews. And if you see my video about Chibi Reviews, you know that there was Twitter drama that they kind of promoted about Anime News Network before, a few months ago. And now this is another situation that kind of blew up, which this was like not a big situation, but for some reason it kind of blew up more than it probably ever should. So let's talk about it. Okay. So Criticold, not critical, by the way. Reviews always be having some drama. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if he's always having drama. I do know lately he's been trying to dive more into these kind of things, which I really don't want him to, because the kind of shit he was starting to do is the shit Hirohei does. It's a slippery slope towards Hirohei's videos, and Hirohei is, oh god, that's the cesspit of the anime community, especially in terms of YouTube videos. Oh god, it's so bad. But let's start from the beginning here, okay? Critical tweeted out, there is something to... can I show my screen? There you go, you can see my screen. There's something to be said about how sometimes anime just don't... Let me read it again. There's something to be said about how sometimes anime that just don't do anything wrong immediately get praised as if it's a masterpiece. Like, who among us genuinely thinks Spy X Family is the greatest anime they've seen? Show them to me. Obviously, when you tweet something like this, you're going to get, you're going to get the quote retweets. You're going to get those. That's going to happen. Especially, you're just going to get people saying, me, I'm watching Spy Family. I like Spy Family. the being upset at this kind of tweet out of context is reasonable. It's reasonable. However, this beginning tweet makes it very clear that we're not. He said Among Us. Yes, there were also a lot of people making memes about it, him saying Among Us. Yes, we understand, Shadow. That happened. Critic Cold opens it up by saying that we're not talking about this one show in particular. We're talking about a broader topic. The topic being overhype when it comes to recently airing anime. A popular show like Spy X Family comes out, super popular, everybody's watching it, and people are praising it so much and rating it so high, it's getting to the top of like my anime list of all time shows or whatever, and people are calling it better than some older classics, which everybody really likes and stuff like that. And it's like, there's a discussion you could have about that, right? This is always going to be a thing, by the way, where overhype is always going to happen every season, because as much shows as we get, this is all in my opinion here, by the way, as many shows as we get, like 40 or 50 every season, very few of them are actually good. Good enough, at least, for a lot of people to be talking about them. So the very few shows that we get that we think are good, you're not going to hear people fucking stop talking about them. They're going to think it's the next best thing since whatever. Fucking sliced bread is better than sliced bread. And what you're going to get is a thing. Words. I suck at doing things live now because I haven't done it in a while. Okay, hold on. Let me collect my thoughts. Let me close these tabs. There's a lot that you can talk about when it comes to recency bias and overhype when it comes to anime, because it's something that's always going to happen. And we have to understand that there's some things I disagree about with what Critical is trying to think and imply with some of these tweets, in that he's saying that, like, it's always a bad thing to say that a new show that's, like, not doing anything wrong should be hailed as a masterpiece. Or I don't think there's... I don't... What he's trying to imply is that no new show that comes out will be the greatest thing ever, will be the new masterpiece, will be the new classic. What I think he fails to understand with this kind of tweet is that, like, people are seeking something new. People want to be there for the birth of a new classic, right? They want to be there for it. I talked about this kind of stuff with my view on that kind of discussion, because this is the actual discussion he wants to have. So I commented my kind of thoughts on that thing on my Twitter, by quote tweeting this or whatever, and then I walked away. But it's just very upsetting that some people are only seeing the second one and thinking, wow, this guy's just somebody who really is spiteful towards Spike's family, and he's just being really hateful towards people that are saying it's great. Which, I don't necessarily know if he even thinks it's bad. I think he just wants to point to it as an example of what he's talking about with overhyped new anime. That people, when the show ends, they're probably not going to talk about it as much. They're probably just going to read the manga and they're going to move on from it. And this especially happens with comedies. A lot of comedies are not kept in, like, the grand sphere of, like, what we recognize as a masterpiece or a classic forever. A lot of comedies are kind of really enjoyed and then ignored. That's kind of how it works. However, what happened was that Chibi Reviews decided to make a video about this tweet. And Chibi Reviews' video was specifically titled something like, fuck, what was it titled? I think it was specifically titled, "There are people who make entire personalities out of hate, or hating things, or hating something popular." I think that was. And they based the whole video off of these two tweets. Now, Chibi himself, I said this all on Twitter before, I don't think he's a bad guy. The problem was he was just taking these tweets as an example of something else he wanted to talking about. He wanted to talk about people who make entire personalities out of hating something. The problem is he doesn't understand that that's not what Critical was doing here. He probably saw this second tweet, felt like this was just a person who really hates Spy Family for no good reason, and didn't want to engage with the first part. I know he saw the first part because he showed both tweets on screen in the video, and he referenced both tweets being a thing or something like that. Now, I'm saying all this, again, he's not a bad guy, and he kind of reinforced that he's not a bad guy with the fact that he ended up deleting the video. Because what happened was, people, including me, were just like pointing out, Chibi, why the fuck are you making this video? Chibi, why are you making a video about like these two tweets that aren't even talking about like what you're trying to say? This isn't like him existing only to hate Spy Family. This is him trying to have a discussion about overhype. Like this, like Chibi, you gotta chill. Chibi. So he made like a whole video about it. And the thing about Chibi is that like he doesn't seem to realize it. He has a big audience now. I mean, I'm sure he realizes he has a big audience, but I don't think he fully realizes how some of the things he'll say or talk about will obviously send his fans towards something or someone. And it was fine before because, you know, his big audience was mostly just him talking about reviews of manga chapters or anime episodes or anime in general, or some kind of anime news that happened, they want to discuss something, or something that went wrong in the anime industry side of things, and then maybe they got some talking points about the anime industry wrong, but that's something that a lot of people get wrong anyway, so it's like, okay, you can kind of forgive him for that, but he still has a big audience. And so this kind of thing happened with the Anime News Network thing that I talked about before, where he wanted to make a big video and a big kind of drama thing, because the community was talking about this thing. It was a discourse thing that was happening. But that one was like a little different because it was like, oh, these people were shitting on Mushoku Tensei in a joke review about Faraway Paladin, comparing the two, and it felt really weird and awkward. But like, that one was like more of a case of like, he's clearly not fully reading things, or like taking some things out of context and just going with it. That video, he just definitely didn't realize the rest of the interview or the review was fine until after he was done making the video, and then just published the video anyways, because he's like, I already put all this work into it, I might as well publish it. Where it's like, you know, if you want to have some criticism against how the Anime News Network people were handling the situation, that's fine. But a lot of what him and Otaku Espirito were doing were literally like shitting on them for things that they weren't necessarily doing, and twisting their review to be a big hate piece on Mushoku Tensei when there was only like joke hate towards that show in like the very beginning of the review. The rest of it was very lengthy past the beginning part. It was a very reasonable review, which Chibi even admits was a way more reasonable review, even though he had some disagreements with some of their thoughts. But Chibi probably didn't see that kind of stuff until after he was done making the video, and he was like, all right, well, I'm still going to make it, so. Which is fine. All that stuff is kind of fine. The problem was just that the fact that, like, Chibi kind of started a lot more of the discourse with. I'm sure there was a little bit of, like, rumbling or whatever, some kind of upset people talking about what was happening with the anime news stuff on Twitter. But Chibi took the first couple bits of the article, screen capped them, put them into a tweet, and publicly kind of denounced the ANN writers because of it. And what that does, because it obviously would do with a big audience like his, is nobody decided to actually read the review after seeing those tweets. They don't have to. They just have to read those few couple screenshots that are the very beginning, and they could just imagine what the rest of it is going to be, because that's what Chibi is implying that the rest of it is going to be. And so that's not Chibi being malicious. That's just him being he just doesn't really understand how some of those actions he could do, especially when he's talking about drama related, like, or discourse stuff. He doesn't understand how much bigger of an impact he can have talking about it and the ways he talks about it, which isn't necessarily just a problem with him. It's a problem with a lot of big influencer kind of people, especially YouTubers who kind of blew up without realizing it, or without like really like, you know, it just kind of happens all of a sudden. And now they're just kind of thrust into this role they're not familiar with. Now, so Chibi kind of did that kind of thing again with this tweet instead. And I think people were responding to that situation saying, oh, he's been doing this recently with other kind of stuff too. I haven't looked into those kind of videos yet. I kind of check his stuff on and off. depending on if the subject he's talking about is something I'm interested in. So like if he's reviewing something I haven't read before, I'm not going to check that out because I don't want to get spoiled. But some of his stuff I'll still check out, but not all of it, because I follow a whole bunch of anime YouTubers and I would rather read some more analytical focused thing as opposed to like Chibi kind of analyzes things, but not to a satisfactory extent for me. They're all kind of like surface level kind of analysis of some chapter stuff, like obvious things. But he's, you know, he's decent for like an up-to-date review analysis of something that's getting attention, right? So that's the place to go if you want updates of stuff like Mushoku Tensei author has released this thing or whatever, or this new episode of Mushoku Tensei was great because it does this or whatever, this chapter of Classroom of the Elite is exciting because of this or whatever, you know, those kind of things. And with this, he made his video about it. People were starting to be like, Critical's just tweeting like, what the fuck did I do, guys? What did I do? Why is this becoming a big thing? Why am I getting anime YouTube videos about me now? And to Chibi's credit, it took him a few hours before he addressed it at all, because he kind of kept posting about other stuff, and he made another video as well, like a couple hours later too, or I don't know if it was a couple hours later, but he apparently was tweeting that he hadn't slept in like 30 hours or something like that, so it was like he might be a little tired and weird too. But the next day after that kind of happened, and people were just like, Chibi, what the fuck are you doing? And I tweeted out about it as well, kind of being like, Chibi, I don't think Chibi's a bad guy, but again, he's doing this stuff and it's bad, and he doesn't realize that it's bad. That was the whole point of my video before, was to be like, what you're doing is bad, you just don't understand it yet. And we really don't want you to go the Hero Hey route. I'm so glad that I'm verifiably not the only one that thought that the way Chibi was handling these kind of drama things was kind of like Hero Hey. Because that's what I thought with the Anime News Network situation, and that's what so many people were saying about this video about Critical. And so, like, we don't want him to go that route. We don't want him to become another Hero Hey, because Hero Hey's content is, oh god, that's a whole discussion for another time. But good on Chibi, though. I will say this situation ends on a good note. Chibi, the next morning, kind of had a clarity moment. I don't know if he was stressed because he was seeing some of the stuff that people were saying, because he did mention he was being stressed about some things, but it might have just been related to something else. And he was just like, I've removed the video, and I want to publicly apologize to Critical. And so he tweeted that, and it all seemed nice. It all seemed good. So that ended on a very nice note. And so I'm glad about that. I thought Chibi was a Hero Hey kind of YouTuber. No. Sorry if this discussion and maybe my previous video might have given you that impression. Chibi Reviews is not at all like Hero Hey. Chibi Reviews did a video that kind of felt like Hero Hey, or how Hero Hey deals with stories in that ANN situation and this situation, but he is not that kind of person. But people were concerned, myself included, that he was going down that route of becoming that. And it's tempting to go that route. The reason why it's tempting to go the route of Hero Hey is because it's a lot of views for like very easy little work. That's why Hero Hey does it. It's just grab a tweet from know-nothing person that anime Twitter has started circulating around, likely talking about some highly disagreeable points or highly contested points about localization or censorship or fan service or something like that. Especially nowadays, if it's a popular thing like Spy Family or Genshin Impact, you do a very quick video of you reading the tweet wrong, or reading the tweet and misunderstanding it heavily, but a lot of times literally just reading the tweet wrong too. Or sometimes not even reading the tweet, just showing a tweet and then a series of like the replies and not even reading them and just saying, I thought this was a really cool situation. I just wanted to talk about that. Anyways, that's all for this video. Hope you guys enjoy next video, and make sure to subscribe, like, and all that. It's like, bro, this guy is literally making money off of just grabbing a couple know-nothing person tweets saying dumb shit and just raking in the money because it's a popular topic and it's this guy saying something dumb. Holy shit. But he's just like, some people in his community are just like, oh, but he actually does good because his videos are set to raise money for charity as well. It's like, well, that's great. I would like that money to be raised by not being doing shitty things like that. But you can't exactly cancel that out like that, right? I don't get to go out and kill somebody and get away with it because I donate money to a homeless shelter. That's not exactly how that works. Not to say that he's killing anybody. It's just to say that you can't take an evil action and counterbalance it with a donation like that. Like, that's not how that works. You don't get to do that. But that's kind of like how Hirohei's community see it. They're just like, oh, he's base, he's cool. He's barely doing anything in some of his videos. But, that's not to say that, like, that kind of work is not something everybody should do. Like, it works for the algorithm. I'm sure it makes him a considerable amount of money. Although I'm not entirely sure how many of his videos are monetizable. I can only imagine they would still be monetizable and working well, especially if you're raising money for charity through his kind of videos. The only thing is, like, they're all really short too, though. They're not very lengthy videos. They're like 4 minutes long or something like that. So I don't know exactly now. But his whole thing is just like they crank out a bunch of videos, I think daily, doing that kind of thing. And so you get a lot of viewers because it's like, oh, this is a 3-minute video and it was kind of interesting about a topic that was easy to hate on. So I can watch this other video that's only 3 minutes, easy to hate on. So you kind of get that cycle going, and that's how that kind of, the algorithm promotes that a fuck ton. If you watch one Hirohei video, don't do this. If you watch one Hirohei video, you will get a Hirohei video recommended to you for the next week. Even if you're not subscribed to it at all and you really don't want to click it, or if you downvoted the video you watch, or if you clicked off the video, you will be recommended his videos for like a week straight, and there's nothing you could do about it. It's like, Jesus Christ, no, please, I don't want to see Hirohei's thumbnail on my YouTube homepage every day when I wake up. Please don't do this. That's how it goes. You make money. Might have to be a Hirohei YouTuber. I mean, hey, it works. It makes the money. I personally hate it. Other people enjoy it for the easy drama entertainment, I guess. But a Hirohei video is, people tend to forget. It's him sending a large audience to one random person. More likely than not, a young, like, teen, like a 15, 14-year-old who's just saying something dumb or whatever. And now you're sending giant Hirohei audience of assholes and trolls, and Hirohei can try to say don't harass the people or whatever. Every fucking YouTuber and streamer knows you can't just say that, and even you can't even block out their names and say, shrug your shoulders and say, well, I hid the name, I told people not to harass them. They're going to. So if you're gonna do it by like misrepresenting what the fuck they're saying and making them to be an asshole, or barely even doing any work, just showing their tweet and saying, look at this fucking idiot, haha. Anyways, make sure to like and subscribe. It's like, Jesus Christ, what are you doing? I don't know. I hate Hirohei's videos. There's another account similar to Hirohei's channel, Rev Says Desu. The only difference I would say from what I've experienced of Rev Says Des is that they actually understand what they're reading. They actually, not to say necessarily that the topics they pick are better, nor they necessarily does more work than Hirohei, but they don't seem to misunderstand what they're reading or misrepresent what they're presenting like Hirohei does. At least in my experience. They seemed way more better at it and less trying to, like, they were clearly trying to farm short, did I say farm? I meant farm. They were clearly trying to farm short length YouTube content about the anime sphere, the common drama talking points related to all that stuff. But like bringing out, like, I think they'll also do the thing where they'll bring some small know-nothing person and then people get sent to them or something like that. But at least they're like not really misrepresenting what they're saying. But someone like Hirohei does that constantly. Constantly. Oh, I'm subscribed to Rev. I never finished a video because it stretches everything out way too long, though. Oh, yeah, I remember that, too. He did do that, too. I guess that's the other thing that I would say. Hirohei's video, he, like, will either not really read the tweet, he'll just show responses and then say, thanks, everybody, make sure to subscribe. Or he will talk about the situation several times, saying the same shit over and over again to hit, like, some minimum length, it seems. And he's like not really adding any input of his own. He's just recapping what happened again. Like what? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the crazy one. I don't enjoy YouTube videos that are just reading tweets to me. I don't enjoy that. I want to hear someone's actual thoughts about something, not the general anime community's opinion about some of these thoughts about this thing. No, I want to hear your fucking opinion about it. I mean, that's just me. I don't know. But that's my thoughts on that situation. Or he'll go on an unrelated tangent. Oh, yeah, he does that. Oh, God, he does that. All right, now the other one. Wow, there's a couple. Can I find it? Can we find it? Oh, this one. So, Days, I think that's how you pronounce Days? I don't know. So, this person tweeted, what you can see here, translated Yabai as Manga S today. How's your day going? If you're from Twitch, you understand Manga S. You understand what Manga S feels like. Manga S is the emote that you send. It's a scared looking frog. It could mean terrible, fear, whatever, nervousness, things like that. It can represent those kind of things. Yabai, I personally, myself, I don't think that's too far off. I think, that's kind of like a translation that could work if it's in context of a Twitch chat, like a stream chat. Now, there's a discussion that can be had if it's, not in a stream chat, of course. Probably shouldn't translate to Manga S. It'd be awkward if you have like random dialogue between characters and they say Manga S for various reasons. The main one being that they're not in a stream chat at all in any way, shape, or form. But if this is a stream chat message that you've localized to Manga S, that's another thing that I could be okay with. What it turns out is, to clarify, and they clarify here, this came about when I was watching an English VTuber live stream on Twitch and the subject turned to learning Japanese. Yabai was mentioned, and a flash of inspiration made me throw out Yabai is Japanese for Manga S in the chat, which prompted an amused giggle from the streamer. What happened though, is that this tweet happened, and everybody lost their shit in the anti-localization community. What happened is that people were saying this is why localizers are evil. This is what happens when you don't pirate. You should be pirating. They'll tweet shit like it is morally correct to kill localizers. They'll unironically tweet that shit. And they won't see anything wrong with it. And they'll lose their mind over somebody saying, I translate Yabai as Manga S. By the way, this person is not an official translator. From what I've understood, they are not official translator of like anything. At least not right now. They're like either a fan subber or somebody who just does translation of stuff themselves for fun. And this situation wasn't even something that was going to be published at all in any way. This was them talking to a VTuber in a literal live stream chat on Twitch and saying Yabai is Japanese for Manga S as a joke. And so they tweeted out this because it's not incorrect. It's not fully incorrect for the context. What I had a problem with was people were losing mind because obviously none of them, so many people who are just like, Westerners ruin translations with their politics and shit like that. What the fuck does Yabai does not mean Manga S? What the fuck is a Manga S? It's like, bro, there's no context that would make it work. Have you ever thought maybe in a stream chat it would work? You might not like it. You might be like, I hate that translation. But it works. It works. Now, there's arguments to be had about, if that's appropriate to translate, even with that context. You could say, the tone is kind of different, or I'd only want it translated as Manga S if they actually said Manga S, because that's an emote as opposed to an actual phrase or reaction. There's those things I'm fine if you have a problem with. The problem is most people didn't have a problem with that. They were just too blind to understand that context can exist that can make this kind of translation work even if you don't like it. And this is a problem that I've faced before, and some of you guys have told this story to about, where I've had an interaction with somebody named Gams who was very, apparently they're ingrained in the r/visual novels, or I forget which one, the big visual novel subreddit. They're like the head mod of, and has been kind of like semi holding it hostage just by the fact that he was the head mod, and he won't get kicked out, but he's somebody that a lot of the people on that place don't like because of how he treats things and deals with things and how he argues. People like him are what I would describe as a bit like the large kind of thought process of what's wrong with the anti-localization community. I talked about this, and we'll get into this with another kind of situation as well. There's problems with the localization community, no doubt about that. But the main problem with people who are arguing against localization is that they're all machine learning freaks. And I say that very derogatorily. People don't seem to understand that translation can be very subjective and very difficult to do. Now, you can argue something like, well, eventually computers will be able to fully translate the language. We're nowhere near that yet. Not even close to being able to fully translate it with all the context and everything working out perfectly fine. So right now, everything's still going to be heavily subjective, and no matter how much tantrum throwing you do or shitting your pants and crying you do, that's not changing anytime soon, okay? So you're going to have to deal with the fact that your machine translation will be dog shit for a very, very long time, all right? I'm sorry. You can still work on it. I don't have a problem with that. The main problem with their mindset is that because they are machine learning freaks, which, by the way, I'm a programmer, so I'm not, you can do machine learning stuff. I have no problem with that. The problem is just the fact that they are so narrow-minded with their view. They'll look at this tweet and not immediately think of, hey, maybe there's a context where that is awkward and I would hate it, but it would work. And that would be a live stream chat. That's the first thing any sane person would think of when you think, oh, this person translated Yabay's Manga S. That must be for a live stream chat. It has to be for a live stream related thing. Either in an actual one or in like a fictional one in a story or a manga or something. It has to be. They don't see that. It's impossible for them to perceive the possibility of that. They will literally Google Translate Yabai, screen cap that Google Translate, and say, I'm gonna see Manga S here. You fucking... Seriously? Like, what the fuck? How can you be that dense? Like, I don't know. It's and what Gams was doing before when he was arguing with me, some of you guys don't remember when I talked about the situation, he was showing me screenshots of out of context visual novel dialogue and told me hold on. His argument was basically that all localizers are scammers currently. All official localizers are scammers, basically. And I was like, how do you come to that conclusion? And he showed me like 2 out of context visual novel screenshots and said, here, this should make sense even to somebody who's a monolingual like you, which, by the way, very weird to call someone a monolingual or monolinguist as a derogatory term, which is definitely what he was doing, but okay. So he showed me 2 out of context VN dialogues, which there's nothing wrong with them grammar-wise. I don't know the context of the story, what's going on. I'm not given the visual of what's going on in the scene, which is a big part of the visual novel side. And yet I'm told to understand that this is poor translation. I'm not even shown like the original Japanese or anything. I'm just like, this doesn't tell me fuck all. You've taken so much context out of this. And you've told me that localizers and translators are scammers. And you're also a translator. I don't know if he's an official localizer. How am I supposed to trust your word over anybody else's word on this shit if I don't know Japanese? He lost his shit. He couldn't argue it. He just couldn't. He just kept hiding in his shell of being like, oh, no, you just don't understand anything. This was a lesson, and you just didn't fucking learn anything. I was trying to teach you. I was like, what are you talking about? You literally sent me out of context stuff, and I kept explaining to you this is out of context. They can't see it. They just can't see it. They can't see any sort of realm where additional context of anything could fix what feels like awkward translation, because those translations he was showing me, there was nothing wrong with the grammar or anything. He was more trying to say, isn't it awkward that this sentence is right after this sentence? I'm like, well, not really. It depends heavily on a lot of things, like what's going on in the scene, what they're talking about. He's like, well, this guy's talking about the war. Why would he bring up a bridge all of a sudden? Or why would he bring up food or something like that? I don't know. Like, you've taken so much context out of it. You didn't even send the original Japanese with it. How the fuck am I supposed to know any of this shit? Why am I supposed to trust you? And he's just like, oh, it should be obvious that these are poor translations. It should be obvious. No, it shouldn't be, because you've taken out so much context. What do you mean? There are literal out of context gimmick accounts that exist all over the internet, whose entire goal was to make weird sentences or weird sequences of events show on your feed. They're out of context. They're going to be weird. You're not going to assume it's a bad, like, translation or a bad, bad clip of a streamer or something like that. You're just going to assume there's context left out of it that makes it weird. But they don't see it. They don't get it. It's impossible for them to get it. By the way, Gams showed up in this whole situation as well. Gams showed up. You cannot give context post hoc and say, wow, given this new information, which I intentionally kept from you, your comments are off the mark. Given all information available to me initially, there was nothing at all wrong with my reaction to the guy's tweet. Gams, you need to step outside of your little realm, your little world in your head. He assumed so much about this guy and this situation based off of nothing but the initial tweet. And he's like, oh, you can't give more context later and say I was wrong. Well, you were. You just were. You can, and people will often do that. But it makes sense that he would just not understand that. They're physically incapable of it. They're incapable of it. People thought he was doing a bit with how he was reacting to the situation. He can't do it. Him and all the other, like, people that are anti-localization tend to be machine learning freaks who just want it to be one-to-one. I want it to be one-to-one. If there's any kind of change to this kind of thing, even subtly, it just is not faithful to the original. It makes no sense. It is fucking out of this world. It is inserting politics. People are weird. I don't know, people are weird. So that's that situation. Related to that kind of is this other one that I talked about earlier. This person, and again, I don't mean to attack this person specifically. They have some things that they want to talk about, and I just wanted to talk about those kind of talking points, which are not new topic points, but stemming off of the Diaz situation, this is entirely sparked from. This is entirely sparked from the Diaz Manga S situation. Anti-localization is a term being pushed by localizers uncomfortable with their dubious work being questioned by their increasingly fed-up end audience. It's disappointing to see it parroted by people unaware of the actual problems in the industry. There are very real concerns being increasingly raised, but you'll notice these get swept away because it's easier to focus on Twitter trolls being their usual hate-filled attention-seeking selves. And you'll find these toxic voices on both sides of the issue. If you can learn to filter those unnecessary voices out of the discourse, you'll be able to see the real issue far more clearly. Localizers are doing worsening levels of quality of work, and instead of accepting it as is, people should be questioning why this is happening. I don't want to read all of his stuff, but I just want to say that, like, anti-localization as a term is not incorrect for what this person and many other people are doing. They are literally anti-localization. they might be okay with translation. I don't know if I'm necessarily say pro translation, pro official translation, maybe, but they or no, I'm sorry. They'd be I think they would say they'd be okay with official translation, but they'd be pro translation in general because they understand that like people should have access to it outside of the original language. But they're very much anti-localization in terms of they want very little, if any, changes ever done, ever, in between languages. And I'm sorry, that's just not going to happen. You're always going to have something changed through translation. It's just going to happen. You're never going to get it fully one-to-one in a lot of cases. Especially because, from my view, a lot of Japanese seems very contextually based. So it's a lot more difficult. In my view, at least. But I'm sorry, I'm just a monolinguist, according to Gams, so. Now, I will say, though, this person bringing up a point that, like, there are actual concerns in the anti-localization, group. There are problems with the localization industry, such as blatantly inserting politics into certain things, such as when Netflix Evangelion translated a line that was originally a terrorist attack to a terrorist attack by a leftist, which is like, that's a little weird. A little weird there. Don't know if I subscribe to that kind of change. It's not very subtle there. It's very awkward. Or like all the weird stuff that happened with Dragon Maid, where they were like blatantly doing weird stuff, either lowering the like Yuri side of it or the line about the patriarchy or whatever, which is just like, these things are weird. We don't like this, right? It's something like, you know, some people like SJWs and stuff like that, they'll be excited for it for certain reasons or whatever. Certain political sides would agree with some things because they agree with the points that they're being brought up. But overall, as a translation thing, I don't think many localizers support those kind of things when they happen. Sometimes they happen for various reasons, like censorship, which isn't necessarily the localizer's fault, but it can get tricky. But that stuff is obviously stuff that's a concern that should be talked about and brought up. But it's all the small shit. There's so many people complaining about the smallest, dumbest things, like Nagatoro saying sus. People will lose their mind over Nagatoro saying sus. This entire situation started over somebody saying they translated yabai to Manga S, which wasn't even an official translation. But even without that context, it is fucking crazy that you would, like, go on a crusade over somebody translating yabai to Manga S ever. But it's a discussion you can have. It's just weird to have a weird, like, crusade and literally unironically say that it's morally correct to kill fucking localizers or bully them into suicide or something like that, or send death threats and harassment or whatever. It's weird. It's weird. Twitter is just people going crazy over nothing. So, I mean, yes, Twitter is a terrible place just because you can get a large group of people being upset over nothing, crazy over nothing, saying the worst things imaginable over nothing. But that's the nature of being connected through the internet, I guess. So that's the world we live in. That's the things we subscribe to. But people like this are just like, people are now using the term anti-localization as like a derogatory term against us, and they're throwing active criticism under the bus because of it. It's your own fault. I won't lie to you, because what the things that you want to talk about that are active problems that you want to have discussions about, I personally don't have a problem with making that a thing that we should talk about. The problem is you're also accepting of people complaining about the dumb shit. And not only are you accepting the people talking about the dumb shit, those tend to be the loudest situations you guys, like, push out. All the trolls and assholes of weirdness are, like, losing their minds over Nagatoro saying the word sus and saying that this is why we should pirate anime and this is the worst thing ever to happen. We have Among Us references, because words obviously didn't exist before Among Us, but whatever. It's if you want your side of this stuff to be actually like addressed, if you want to be recognized for the problems you have with the localization industry, you need to be condemning those kind of fucking people. Why would you as a group want these idiots who are screaming about the smallest know-nothing thing? But, not only do you want them, not only do they want them in their camp, they also will prop up a lot of those incidents as their main examples and talking points. Why would you do that? You only have yourselves to blame for anti-localization as a term being used to discredit your actual discussion, because you guys on your side have allowed some of these dipshits to take over it, because most of the people in the anti-localization camp are not the nuanced or thought out discussions and points and stuff that you would actually want to promote a discussion about. Most of them, the loudest voices and the largest amount of voices, are from the fucking asshole trolls trying to say we should kill and harass translators over them having Nagatoro say sus, or Evangelion doing something weird with a subtle dialogue change with how they translate ski, to like someone into love or whatever, the layers that go on with that. There were problems with the Netflix Evangelion translation, okay? Some more reasonable than others, but others are just insanely going through hoops to say weird things. But they say gatekeeping is bad. Nah, you dumb for real. It's weird too, because these kind of people would actively promote gatekeeping and shit like that. But they'll be accepting of the dumbest people through the gates. I don't know. I don't get it. It's oh God. Oh God. And you will never be able to translate it directly all the time. There's a lot of translations that will be highly subjective and weird. It's very hard to translate the same thing between two people and have it be the same thing. It would be very difficult. It will be vastly different, especially for various reasons. Knowledge, cultures, languages. If you translate from Japanese to English or Japanese to Spanish, if you translate something from Japanese to English and then English to Spanish, well, now there's an additional layer that you've lost in that kind of translation, right? You're never going to get exactly what you want unless you're reading the language in its original language. That's just how it's going to be. And I'm sorry, most people aren't going to learn a whole language to watch an anime. That's just not going to happen. And I think I said as much. This is an example tweet he wrote. Again, I'm not trying to shit talk this person specifically. It's the points that he's talking about, right? People don't want memes where none existed. They don't want Western politics where Japanese politics didn't exist. They just want the same experience as the original audience. So why is that so hard to get? Well, it's because it's never going to work like that. Never, unless you're reading it in the original language. That's what's hard to get. That's what you are having trouble. That's what you are having trouble getting. It's hard for you to get. The localization understands. Well, I'd say most of the people in the localization get that they don't want certain things. People don't want certain things inserted where they shouldn't be. I'd say most of them probably would agree with that, because every time it happens, it just makes their side look worse, right? I'd say most of them wouldn't want that. But when it happens, it's well, this happened. Now it's either we try to back up the localization side of the argument, or we try to, I don't know what we do with that, because they're not going to change that translation or whatever now that's done. It's kind of done. And some localizers will double down on whatever was just whatever is getting shit on for it, make it out to be not a big deal, whatever. Sometimes it is a big deal. That should be talked about. But on the localization side, it's well, you can't exactly give up ground on a certain thing, because the anti-localization side will not give up any ground on anything. So it's this kind of battle where each side is having to be okay with, and maybe not vocally support, but at least indirectly support some of the dumbest takes on both sides, and it becomes a problem with the other side too. And there's layers to what goes on with the whole localization debate, and it happens like so often. It feels like almost weekly. We're talking about localization, translation, discourse again. Holy fuck! Every single time it happens. Oh. But that's that. That's that one. Again, there's things we should talk about. We can and should talk about some of these things. But people on this side, but people on like either side, it can be tricky for them to like do it because both sides seem so hostile to each other. So I think you need to stay off Twitter. Well, no, I still like this kind of stuff is like dumb rhetoric bullshit, dumb arguments. And this is the thing with my Twitter experience, is just it's a lot of people who I can tell want to have important discussions about things. They suck at doing it, especially on Twitter, because they're so heated and giving reactionary takes with a character limit that vastly like will reduce what they say. Now you might say, oh, but they can post a thread. Well, you want to get like a point or a certain point of your message in that character limit. It's kind of hard to do and all this kind of stuff and whatever. So I don't know, this kind of like these kind of discourses and discussions or whatever, I've always thought would be interesting to host kind of like a big discussion panel on, which I feel like I could probably try to get localization people to want to have a discussion, live discussion panel thing about. But I don't think I'll ever be able to get somebody on the other side to agree to it and be civil during it. I feel like they would just blow up and say some really dumb shit, or most of them just would never do it. Like Gams will never have a conversation with me. Gams will never have an actual call with me ever. God, if that ever happened, holy shit, there's so much that I would like to talk with him about. I just want to pick his brain about some things. He would never agree to it. Never. I tried asking if he wanted to have a Discord call with me in that Twitter thread I have, but, you know, obviously he's like, oh, this fucking loser wants to have a Discord call about this thing, because he knows. He's just like, oh, you're so dumb. You just don't understand anything about it. Motherfucker, if I was really that dumb, you should be begging to have this call with me, because it's like, oh, you get to fucking tear up my points so much, so easily, so effortlessly. But he doesn't want to do it because he knows he's like dug himself into a hole. And that's the other thing too with Twitter. It'll trick people into digging themselves into a hole they don't necessarily mean to be in. And I don't know if that was necessarily what keeps happening with Gams. That's one of my other theories, is that people like Gams have this thing constantly going on where they'll be digging themselves into a hole with a certain argument, and then that's how they have to view it forever. They can be unchanging on it ever. Because if they do, then they give up ground in that previous argument. Whereas more reasonable people, maybe they'll dig themselves deeper into a dumb point that they don't really mean, but they're trying to do it because they're having an argument, trying to win the argument at the time. But then later on, now that things are calmed down, they can like reflect on that argument, be like, you know what? Actually, maybe I shouldn't have said it like that. Maybe I should change my take in the future, make it a little more nuanced or whatever. But people like that kind of crowd, the machine learning freaks is what I'm going to dub them in my head when it comes to, because I feel like there's a difference between some anti-localization people and the machine learning freaks, because you know, I feel like anti-localization people, in my mind, ideally that term would encompass people who mainly have problem with some of the political stuff inserted in, whereas machine learning or machine translation freaks are more they're more upset over the more subtle nuanced changes and or like memes or jokey translations. Like they're probably also upset with some of the political insertion as well, but overall they are like so like detached from what the actual discussion should be that I just don't like respect most of how they argue, especially because a lot of how they argue is really, really dumb and like nonsensical. But, you know, maybe some of the very niche points that they have about translating a certain word is fine, but they like try to go about expressing it like such an asshole and then try to blow it up as a way bigger thing than it actually is. Where it's like, but I guess that's the main way to actually get people to know about those kind of situations, but you know, I don't know. Maybe it's just my view. Maybe like a lot of the anti-localization people weren't like so ready to be so hostile and harassing to translators whenever there was a big fuck up. Or I shouldn't say whenever there's a big fuck up. Whenever there's some level of fuck up, because a big fuck up is something you might be able to talk about, but a smaller thing where you're sending death threats to people over saying Nagatoro, or not over Nagatoro saying sus, or VN translations over like a certain word and how that's translated. Like, we gotta calm down. We gotta calm down with how we handle that kind of stuff. But now the other one kind of related to that, sort of, kind of, has to deal with the situation going on with Anime News Network, which I don't know if I have tweets about. Hold on. This is the last one for tonight. I'm gonna end the stream. And Days is actually involved in this a little bit as well, with some of the people talking about it. Okay. Anime News Network writers have one translator who I think their name was Kate Town something or whatever. They had made a tweet saying Anime News Network reviews will have like an informational section at the bottom of their stuff. If I go to like a review like this, this, where I'll say who was involved with the production, and someone who I think is like, I'm not sure if they're an official localizer or translator or something like that. They were saying that it'd be really cool if we could put translator, like the English translator information here, and people were talking about that on the ANN side, some of which was mostly just boiling down to, people like Lindsay, who's like the executive editor over there. She was just saying like, it'd be cool if we could put it in. Currently with our system, this is something that's automatically done through our encyclopedia coding, which is their basically like big database of information that they pull a lot of stuff from. It's not set up to do that currently. It's something we might be able to work for in the future, but there's also a lot of complicated stuff involved with implementing that kind of thing. Like, if we include it for manga, we have to include it for anime. Sometimes the information is not going to be available, or sometimes like there's like multiple people involved with certain things about it. And eventually it might get to a point where we're including like an entire massive staff list at the bottom of just one quick like review article. Things like that. Whereas like, okay, to me it's reasonable why it's not there right now, but it's something that they might put in later. It's not something that they're against doing. It's just kind of difficult for them to do. Unfortunately, somebody else who I believe, I forget if they own it or something, Ed something, if I can find him. No, Christopher McDonald is ANN Ed. This guy had Anime as publisher. Okay, that's what they are. He had unfortunately started talking about it in a way, and it made a lot of translators think that he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Yeah, this was the main one a lot of people had problems with. He was trying to explain why they don't currently have it on the site, and why he thinks that they should only really include it if the review is directly making some kind of comment about it. Like the otherwise there's no real like big thing or whatever about, like, I don't know, if they're not mentioning that specifically in the review, then it's not going to get mentioned, like. And so he says, if you have the choice between the two best character designers for your anime, the choice will very much impact how the anime looks. If you have the choice between the two best translators for your manga, the result of their work should hopefully be very similar, which is not correct. It's not how this works in practice. I'm sure people like the machine learning freaks, like we talked about before, probably want that to be the future. Translation and localization is very much an art form in itself, and there are several big published works that, especially in the public domain, that have had many different translations over many years, and they're not different because they're not different because somebody used a verb wrong all those years ago. They're different because people had different styles of translation, right? But he's luckily gone back on this, said, I thought about this, and in retrospect, this statement was wrong. I've deleted the original tweet. Two competent individuals reading the same passage will often interpret it slightly differently. Add translated that passage on top of this, and my statement just doesn't make sense. So, I'm glad. I didn't actually even realize that he had walked this back through his tweets like this. I know he had expanded on his thoughts about some of this kind of stuff elsewhere, but I'm glad he directly went back on that, because that was like a weird thing that people were starting to like make fun of the situation about. Lindsay said, if you don't think our reviewers comment on the quality of the actual writing flow vocabulary of a manga, so sure the translation then congrats, you've constructed a straw man. This argument has morphed at this point, which it did. People were morphing this a lot into thinking that like reviewers like don't ever talk about the translation of it, which is not at all what she was saying. She wasn't even saying that like their reviewers aren't allowed to. What some people were doing, and I think we'll go into this a little bit later in this thread, is people like Days were saying, essentially saying that reviewers should have some sort of checklist and mention something about everything. The problem is obviously that like if a certain reviewer doesn't feel a certain way about the art, or doesn't feel like, if I, like me especially, this would apply to, if I'm just like, the animation worked for it, I'm not like a big deep animation analytical like person. I barely understand how things move as it is until I read Animeta, I guess. So it's just like yeah, it looks decent for what it's trying to do. I'm more focused on the story. What am I supposed to do on my review? Just spend like a sentence or two saying, yeah, the animation was alright, maybe it could have been better, but it wasn't worse? Like, no, what the fuck? That's just wasting time for the reader. Like, they don't need to hear about every aspect of everything. And so they're not a group that would force a reviewer to do a checklist of these kind of things, which makes sense to me, but it makes sense to me that they wouldn't do that. I had a real shit morning and I'm very tired, but I'm trying to be grounded here. I don't know if like TL Twitter reads our reviews. I don't exactly expect you to do so, but all these subtweets are exhausting, especially when it seems evident that the reviews aren't being read. I guarantee you that's the case. I guarantee you they're not. I guarantee you maybe if anybody's reading it, it's only going to be somebody screenshotting the top parts of the last this week in anime or last week in anime reviews, and how it very much is not a fully like a full-on review. It's like a column of two people basically having a Discord chat with each other and acting like that's a professional like focused review. It's like, calm down. But that's usually what'll happen with ANN. While most of our team cannot compare and contrast original Japanese to English to critique the translation, a large number are English teachers. The light novel reviews consistently discuss the writing quality. Anyway, I hate to be publicly anything on the internet, so I'm out for now. And this guy who Lost Thief, who was one of the people involved with that ANN chibi situation before. Lindsay has some good points here. One thing that occurred to me as the discussion has gone on is that there's a fine but important line between discussing a translation as a piece of writing and as an accurate, for lack of a better term, translation. That's very true, in my opinion. Translation of something could be accurate, but the story that it's translating might be dog shit. These are different things, right? Most people read and translate. Former's observation. Okay. Discourse on anime-manga translation is already rife with people making huge, uneducated assumptions about what makes for an accurate or faithful translation. When me stepping into that with no... Hold on one second. I just want to check something. Okay. Okay. Discourse on any manga translation is already rife with people making huge, uneducated assumptions about what makes for an accurate or faithful translation. When me stepping into that with no qualification would be more justified if I'm saying positive things instead. And then Daya said, just commenting on the quality of the English writing would be nice. After all, that in itself is going to have a huge impact on the enjoyment one is going to get out of any given title, even if they don't consciously realize it themselves. That's addressed in my original tweet. My comment is about reviews of translated media in general, but if we're talking ANN specifically, I've certainly seen more reviews where EN writing quality is commented on. and others where entire series go by with nary a mention of consistently awkward and stilted EN subs. In general, I would say that various aspects of release quality are pretty consistently under review when it comes to ANN. That's been the case for a long time, and used to be straight up editorial policy back during Zach's time. He told me as much himself. Can't say I agree, but it's something that I can be mindful of in the future. Not entirely interested in cherry picking back and forth. As far as release quality issues, unfortunately, distributor strip quit giving us physical copies to review when I took over. I intend to circle back on it to see if that's changed now that the Crunchyroll-Funi merger, but Discotech doesn't provide physical review copies to us, and Funimation stopped as well during that period. Release quality is relevant to everything, not just anime box sets, like the quality of the translation, quality of the English writing, and the translation, quality of English lettering and manga, also aspects of the English release quality. I think y'all want to be talking across separate definitions here. Typically, when people have requested covering release quality for anime, what they were asking for was coverage of extras, bonuses, or the quality of packaging for collector's editions, stuff like that. This is back and forth about this. There was a certain part of this that I wanted to talk about. These subjects could easily apply to digital physical releases as well. In my humble opinion, the quality of the localization is always worth commenting on, no matter what form of release we're talking about. That localization is our window to the content, so its quality has an enormous impact on how we evaluate said content itself. And I didn't say that it isn't, but you just gave me a checklist, and frankly, sometimes things are serviceable, sometimes they're exemplary, and sometimes they look like shit, and I'm not going to mandate every review say it's serviceable/standard. I would agree with that. IMO, that'd be good, because always commenting on it should lead to a lot more attention being brought to anything that deviates from average. And if, example, one publisher is constantly praised while another is constantly mid, it could actually influence the meh publisher to change. And then somebody else who I believe is also an anime writer. They reviewer for Anime News Network and then also writer for Anime Feminist. Okay. They said, this is like saying that every translation should try to stick as closely to the Japanese as possible. There is an art to criticism, which is funny because Diaz was literally the one earlier who machine translators were yelling at, so I think that's funny. But there is an art to criticism in itself. Just like no two translations will ever be identical, no two reviews will ever be identical. Very, very true. Highly true. I would argue most reviews, like no review, I think, like would ever be objective. They can have objective measures, but they're all highly subjective based on a lot of factors relating to the editor or the writer and then partially the editor, right? So every reviewer has different things that are important to them. We each have our own lens, our own interpretation, our own point of view that we bring to the table. Asking a critic to follow a checklist when reviewing is like asking a translator to just stick to the Japanese script. Pretty much every site that does reviews also has at least some form of editorial guidelines. I don't think it's particularly crazy to suggest that it would be helpful to consumers for release quality to be one aspect of the review when covering English releases of JP Media. I don't necessarily know jack shit about editorial guidelines, especially when it comes to review sites, but I don't think it's the case that most sites would demand somebody doing a review go through a checklist of like certain things. I don't think that would be a thing. I don't think most sites would do that. Certain sites I'm sure would probably do it, but I don't think that's something most sites would do, like he's trying to say. I've written reviews for multiple sites. I have a review quoted on Rotten Tomatoes. I've literally never been handed an editorial mandate on what to comment on in my review. I'd imagine an editorial guideline would more be in terms of like what kind of like words you're not allowed to use, or maybe they'll like only accept something if you're praising the product that you're reviewing or something like that, because there's some fucking place there it's just like, oh, we don't want to offend the people reviewing, like IGN or whatever, or some shit. So they tell them to, or they like promote people to not shit on things too heavily or something like that. But I don't know if that's the kind of thing that they're talking about with editorial guidelines. But and you've also never had any back and forth with any editor about the content of any article you've ever written. I have features, not for reviews. I guess there are like an editor. So even in my experience as somebody who will edit reviews that I have people write for me, I don't necessarily have a checklist for them to do. There will be certain things I will ask for. So, like, if I'm given a review and it's literally just a recap of the events that happened with no thoughts about, like, or no thoughts or expression about, like, whether or not this is good or what things you like about it or what things people will like about it, like, that's something I'll bring up to them to be like, hey, can you talk more about this instead of just recapping things? Recapping things is fine as long as it leads somewhere. Like, do something with that recap. You know, that's something that personally I would do. I wouldn't give them like a checklist. Say, all right, I need to talk about how good the animation is. I need to talk about how good the music is. I need to talk about how good the translation is. No, I would never do that kind of thing. At least not. I haven't tried it at this point. I feel like that'd be super weird to try to give to a writer, but I guess expectations for what a review is are quite different then. For me, what I look for in reviews is help in making informed decisions about whether a particular product is of interest to me or not. So I would indeed like them to be more than just free-form essays. I'm sorry, Days, that's how most reviews are, especially when it comes to entertainment products. What you're talking about is a review of an actual physical product you will buy, as opposed to like an art, like a movie or a book or a TV show or a song. Like, typically those are always going to have some kind of bias because it's literally a review of art. What do you expect out of that? I don't, like, there's not going to be some kind of objective, like, thing about a product when it comes to entertainment and art. It's just not going to happen. So I guess you're more Mal user reviews than Roger Ebert then. All right, that's a little, so we gotta calm down there, but not really. If you're, example, reviewing movies in theaters in the US, the experience of that is basically fully standardized, making it not worth commenting on. I don't think that's true at all. But all right. Compared to that, any localized JP media is far less standardized experience, which in turn makes it worth commenting on. If you go to the movies in the US, there's basically no guesswork involved in terms of what you're going to get in terms of, example, technical presentation. The same is not true for localization of JP media, with many differing standards and levels of quality found across the industry. I don't know if that's true that every movie review site you read is going to include anything about technical presentation all of the time. I feel like this person only reads reviews from the big fucking sites that are very formulaic or whatever about it. There's so many other review sites, and like, I feel like they have a heavily, like, narrow view of, like, how these other review sites are based on the few sites that they probably use. I don't feel like most Marvel fucking movie reviews are all talking about the technical presentation specific. Like, I feel like there's some aspects of some of those reviews that they leave out or miss. I don't feel like all of them do what this guy's expecting them to do, because that kind of checklist that they're kind of asking for can extend a very long way, and some people might not be satisfied with it in a certain way, but I don't know. I feel like there's, especially when you go to, like, YouTube reviews of these kind of things, they are very much freeform kind of essay deals, but I don't know. That's why I'm talking about release quality is meaningful when it comes to localized JP media. There's little guarantees about what you're going to get in the business, which is why it's relevant to consumers to have places to learn about it. A review would be a natural fit. I see what you're getting at. I do think if there's something about the translation that's notable, good or bad, it deserves to be commented on. If there is no commentary on the translation quality, though, you could probably assume it's serviceable. I think that's reasonable. If I don't mention the art in a good or bad way, it was animated. That's literally what you should take out of it. Like, yeah, I agree with that. Well, the thing is that I've seen a lot of English reviews where nothing was said about release quality, and it turned out to not be so serviceable after all. In that regard, having reviewers write about it regularly ought to also lead to them being more discerning about it. And also, reviewers being more discerning about release quality would be very helpful for consumers indeed when it comes to products where the releases come with very little guarantees about the quality. I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest that reviewers keep localization slash release quality in mind, but asking to make it an editorial mandate is pushing it too far. I would agree with that. Molly Lee, I believe, is also a translator. I think I followed them at some point. I forget why I unfollowed. I might follow again. Yeah, I don't think it's constructive to demand so much all at once. You're talking about not listening to us when we try to explain the barriers and the reality of our work. See, this is the problem that I have with this whole situation, and Days is kind of like embodying it perfectly. They brought up a good point in that, you know, Anime News Network should probably be crediting some or originally what started this whole discussion is that Anime News Network should probably make some kind of mention of the localizers or translators, even if it's just like in the bottom section of the review, underneath the review. It doesn't necessarily have to be ingrained in the review or whatever. And as soon as somebody brought that up, there was such a huge like demanding force between these people online to force Anime News Network and shame them for not having done it already. Where it's like they're saying several times that, yeah, sure, we'll do it. It's just going to take a while and be probably complicated. So, you know, don't hold your breath on how it gets implemented, but we want to do our best with it. But you know, especially with how Christopher, what was his name? Chris McDonald or whatever, the ANN publisher dude, with how he was wording some of his stuff, like people were starting to get really upset with like what it sounded like. But like, you know, him and even the other people were just constantly saying, we want to do what you're asking for. We'd love to, but it's more complicated than you guys think. There's a reason why we're not doing it already. It's just kind of like complicated for us to implement through like our system currently. And then there's like layers of like, all right, if we're crediting these people in manga, we have to do the same for anime as well. And there's barriers with that. And then there's, you know, all these other people there involved with the anime adaptation. Where does this kind of end? It's not that they don't want to or that they refuse to do it. It's just that it's more complicated and will open up a can of worms that's kind of trickier than how some of these people on Twitter are trying to do like this kind of thing. Please just mention your translation. It's like they don't mind doing that. It's just they don't want this to extend or it would be difficult to extend it further than that because it just might be a can of worms that never ends or whatever. And so you have people saying, we hear what you're saying and we want to do better with it. But the other people are saying, no, you have to do it now. The fact that it's not already implemented is insane. You're the biggest anime news source and you're doing it like this. I hate you guys or whatever. They're like shaming them for it already. When like they literally just brought it, they're like, you know what? Yeah, we maybe we should. It's going to be tricky for us to do, but we would love to get something worked out like that in the future. Now that you guys brought it up or whatever. And then with this situation, which is a slightly different argument about whether or not certain things should be mentioned in reviews, which feels like it's more commenting on the like more loose kind of form editorials that they do, like the This Week in Anime or Last Week in Anime or whatever kind of deals, which a lot of people don't like how that's formatted. But that's fine. If you're against how those kind of things are formatted, just don't read them. Read an actual review, because those aren't actual fully like formed reviews, right? But some people are also upset with how the reviews are written, so they're like, I want this thing mentioned with this review because I value this thing more. Well, it's like, well, sorry, most people don't tend to focus on that in some of these reviews anyways, and we don't feel like forcing our writers into a checklist for the review. So tough shit. Because it's like before, it's like we're trying to like shame this big company into crediting translators and localizers, even though they're not the ones that, you know, there's still a lot of big problems with localization translators getting recognition even among the publishing works that they work on, right? Some companies won't even credit them on it still, or they'll like heavily underpay them, or they'll like take their name off at the last second or put somebody else on it or some weird shit like that. I don't know. Now we're trying to shame a company that's not even involved with that kind of process. They're just reviewing that kind of work. And because they haven't done it before, we're shaming them and kind of trying to force them to put it into high gear. Which in some cases, that's fine. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to say, hey, maybe translators or localizers involved with bringing the English release of this thing should be credited for it. But then you also have to specify things like which version of this release is it, because something published by one company might end up being published by another company later, and will need a different translation, so you have to specify in the review which edition of it that is, and stuff like that, which isn't hard to do. But things like their system make it difficult with their current code, so they'll have to work on that. And it's not out of the realm of possibilities, it's just difficult. And what Days is doing here is taking that kind of like shame them into doing something they probably should have already been doing thing, and they're doing it now with the concept of how a reviewer should review, which is a lot more niche, highly subjective, and they are kind of, I agree with I don't know their name, Altson or whatever. I agree with their kind of deal, and like the way they're seeing it is kind of similar to machine translating or one-to-one translating something, and that you want a reviewer to review things very formulaically into the way that you want. But I'm sorry, this is not, as much as you like to say, oh, I don't like it because it's free form. Other review sites don't make it free form. Well, sorry, it's free form. Sorry, we're not My Anime List here. We're not some whatever movie sites you read reviews from. It's just not. That's not how we do it. If you don't like it, go to a different site and read their reviews. There are other anime review websites you can go to. You can do that. If you're upset because there's not many that do it in the formulaic way that you want, it's probably because there's not that many sites that do that. You just kind of might think that because some big movies you read reviews about probably do it in the formulaic way that you want. I'm sorry, I don't know. Whatever Days is trying to do here, it's like discussions about interesting things, but it seems like they're more in like a demanding tone here. Like, do this thing now. This is a shame that you guys aren't doing this. This is nonsensical that you're not doing this. They're like in the hyper niche mode about this, about something that's a very subjective, like writing work thing. And it's like, that's not going to work out. But the thing I wanted to bring up was just the fact that the main thing was just how, I don't know. I feel like Anime News Network writers and editors and whatever get a lot of shit thrown at them out of nowhere for like really dumb, petty, subjective reasons. But they try to act like it's objective or whatever. Like, oh, this column that you wrote the last week in anime thing, shitting on Mushoku Tensei at the beginning of this review of Faraway Paladin. Well, first of all, it's not a review. They had to clarify that. It's not a review. This is a column of two people basically doing a Discord chat with each other in a comedic fashion, but they're also talking a lot of points about the show. Oh, this is not how a professional review was written. Well, yeah, because it's not a review. What are you talking about? And people will lose their mind over that shit, and then Chi will make a video about it, and then he'll be like, and then he'll be sending people after them, and then they'll have to start blocking people, and then people like Otaku Espiritu will make fun of them for blocking people that have been sent to harass them after a video misled their entire situation. They get so much stuff. Oh my god. I feel so sorry for how much these writers have to deal with. I feel like following some of these people, they're like constantly having to fight people who have the most insane demands and takes and strawmen about the site and its writers ever. It's crazy to me. I read some article recently, granted it was a couple years old, I think it was like 2017, 2018 or something like that. It was written by someone who, I forget their name, Sasuga Nick or something like that. I don't really know. I feel like I recognized the name from somewhere after I saw it, but I don't know where. But this person was like, had an article who had a theory saying Anime News Network is not actually a journalist site. They're like a PR platform that like breaks every journalistic rule, was like their thesis. All their points were super dumb. There was, I think, a couple points that I thought I like agreed with was kind of weird. But most of their points about it would categorize every entertainment website as PR. It's just a weird PR machine whose only goal is to try to get more sponsors and not at all bring actual like news to people. Like, this is entertainment news. There's a specific difference between entertainment news and like a big like main news company, like world news company, right? There's a distinct difference. Entertainment news will have a lot of stuff promoting the entertainment because you want people to be checking out all this stuff. You want sponsors to come from these different companies or whatever to fund you like reviewing their shit or whatever. Like, what do you mean? I don't understand it. But they was just like, oh, actually, they'll review things and they'll make these weird political argument things about them in the middle of a review or something. Oh, no. That was somebody else's thing. His was more focused on the news side as opposed to the editorial side, I think. Theirs was just like, oh, and their news things, sometimes they source something that's just in Japanese, and they trust the Japanese websites much more than actually verifying if they're an actual source, just because they got it from this blog or whatever that had this news, and it turned out to be a rumor like one time or whatever. It was like, okay, you're being super weird with how niche and anecdotal we're being with this example for this, to try to say like they don't actually write news stuff at all. It's like, oh, okay, cool. And oh god, I don't want to read it tonight. I don't want to read it on stream tonight. It was something to read. It was definitely something. Boy, I just feel like Anime News Network gets so much weird shit hurled at them over like the dumbest things. And it's just kind of grown over time. People have this weird perspective of Anime News Network based on like reactionary Twitter people or like weird screaming 4chan like type groups. I don't know. Sorry to say, this is still, Anime News Network is still, in fact, the biggest source for anime news that we got over here. So maybe that kind of aspect is why it gets a lot of weird shit thrown at it. This is the only one. You don't have an opposing news site you could point to and say, use that one instead. There's not many of them. There's barely any of them. I have one, and nobody fucking knows it exists, right? So it's like, sorry, that's just how it is. So, if you don't like it, go start your own and wait for it to get no attention at all, because you don't know what the fuck you're doing. You don't understand the scope of what they have to constantly do and deal with. Go try it. See how it goes. Anyways. Alright. I think that's all I got. That was the main Discourse stuff I wanted to talk about, so I think we're good. I think we're all good. Did you guys enjoy? I enjoyed. Ace already left. I don't even know if Shadow's here, actually. Audio stream's current bitrate is lower than the recommended bitrate? What do you mean? What does that even mean? My bitrate is 0? Can people not hear me? What does that even mean? I don't know. Alright, we're going to end the stream here. Thank you so much, everybody, coming to hang out. Maybe I'll do another one of these kind of weird talk streams another time.